Episode number 926. What have we awakened? The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the warriors of the sacred races were the first to move, so they were also the first to reach the side of the Scarlet King. None of them knew what was happening, but they needed to take Cain out of the dark fog before anything. Then, they would have time to consider their next move and how to help the young man. A monstrous resolution and determination appeared in the eyes of the collapsing Lightning Emperor as he lunged toward the Scarlet King, reaching out for the young man. Sadly for the collapsing Lightning Emperor, just as he was about to take Cain's body, a humanoid of dark sky intercepted his path, attacking with immense speed and killing intent.
Get out!
The collapsing Lightning Emperor roared in hatred and rage as he struck the humanoid of dark sky's chest, sending the alien flying while puking blood. It was clear who was stronger, the Godslayer human or the alien. However, that slight delay allowed the rest of the humanoids of dark sky to reach the area around the Scarlet King.
Boom! ZNNNNN. BAOOOOOO.
Immediately, explosions and waves of utter destruction spread in all directions as the warriors of the sacred races began to clash against the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky in a battle of epic proportions and utter bloodshed. Space shattered and broke apart as the sacred races and dark sky began to clash. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of Ether were using every ounce of their power and life force to prevent the aliens from reaching Cain while trying to take him out of the dark fog. On the other hand, the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky were fighting like bloodthirsty demons, their souls burning with killing intent as they did all in their power to reach Cain and shatter his skull and soul sea, ending his life once and for all. Both sides showed determination and commitment that seemed to rise from the bottom of their souls. They were willing to give everything they had for that single goal. It was not surprising to see that unity in the aliens of dark sky. After all, they were a single force with a single goal from the beginning. However, no matter if they were members of the Dark Camp or Light Camp, whether they were gods or titans, if they belonged to the upper echelon of the Atrox Immortus Empire, or the soldiers from the Godslayer humankind, every single warrior of the sacred races was willing to give everything they had to save the life of the Scarlet King. They would not fail the man who had led them for years against the enemy and opened their eyes to a realm of power they believed could only be found in the stars. With both sides displaying such resolve, it was no wonder that the battleground reached a cataclysmic level, becoming by far the most extraordinary clash Ether had ever seen since its inception. At the center of this apocalyptic battleground was the young man responsible for the devotion and hatred on both sides. His face was down, and he did not make a single move while destruction spread around him. The clash between the warriors of the sacred races and the aliens of dark sky was incredibly fierce and extremely fast. Less than a minute after it started, a golden arrow appeared next to Cain, only for an old man to teleport to it the next second. Lord Kabuto's eyes were full of worry and dread as he feared what might have happened to Cain. He immediately extended his right hand to grab the young man he saw as his son and take him out of this place. Unfortunately for the patriarch of the Solis clan, before his hand could grab Cain's body, a humanoid of dark sky tackled him and pushed him away. Rage and unwillingness appeared in Lord Kabuto's eyes as the humanoid of dark sky separated him from Cain. The next instant, utter terror assaulted his heart since the next one to reach his son was an alien.
Don't do it. Stop it. I will kill you.
The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred races noticed the humanoid of dark sky reaching Cain and shouted with rage and killing intent, expressing a bloodlust that froze the air. Mika could feel their killing intent, but he only smiled. He did not care about the hatred and threats of the enemy. His hand adopted a blade stance as it pierced toward the neck of the Scarlet King. Utter thrill appeared in his eyes as he imagined separating the head of the young man from his body. It would take less than a second for Mika's hand to reach the neck of the Scarlet King. Yet before his hand could reach its target, Cain raised his head. Cain's eyes, empty a second ago, now burst with a dark red light as they focused on the alien aimed at his neck. The light and intent in those eyes made Mika feel as if he were in the presence of a supernova, a force capable of incredible destruction without a shred of emotion. What have we awakened? Every instinct in Mika's soul screamed for him to run back to his home, as the man before him was a monster that could destroy everything. To the shock of all the warriors of the sacred races and the aliens of Dark Sky, Cain dodged the strike from the humanoid of Dark Sky. Not even a second later, he collected a monstrous amount of energy in his right hand. Without hesitation and displaying a skill that went beyond the realm of reason, Cain's hand moved like lightning, piercing into the chest of the humanoid of Dark Sky and grabbing his heart. Cain stared at Mika, who still could not believe what was happening, and without showing even the slightest emotion, he crushed the heart before unleashing a blast of energy that destroyed everything else. The light in Mika's eyes faded, marking the end of his life, but also triggering the self-destruction of his entire body. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 927, The Red King's Power of Order. The explosion of Mika was so immensely powerful that it forced the warriors of the sacred races and the aliens of Dark Sky to pull back, their faces etched with utter and absolute confusion. They were left in a state of awe and shock, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. The collapsing Lightning Emperor, Lord Kabuto, and all the other warriors of the sacred races glanced at each other, their expressions a mix of disbelief and confusion. They had witnessed the Scarlet King's incapacitation. His mental waves vanished, and yet, without warning, he seemed to have regained control and, with a single move, killed one of the strongest members of Dark Sky. It was a turn of events that defied all logic and left them utterly perplexed. The shock and confusion among the grand humanoids of Dark Sky were even greater. They knew perfectly well how powerful the mind-severing ritual was, a ritual that should have completely erased Cain's memory and ego, leaving him as nothing more than an empty shell. So it made absolutely no sense that the young man could awaken in less than a minute. Horus's shock was the greatest of all, as he had been paying close attention to the fight. Even if surprised, Mika was a very powerful humanoid of Dark Sky. For the Scarlet King to kill him with a single strike was too much. The Sundering Concept. It was but an instant, but Horus felt a display of the Sundering Concept at a level that left even a Depravita like him in utter awe. No side made a move, as all eyes focused on the explosion's epicenter where Cain should be. The flaming energy flooded the sky for nearly half a minute before dissipating, revealing the figure of a young man with burning wounds all over his body, the most severe on his right hand, which was now a bloody mess. Although Cain's defenses reached an incredibly high level thanks to the Cosmic Tyrant framework and the Fallen Archangel battle set, Mika's explosion was gargantuan, to say the least. The fact he only received these injuries was already impressive and a testament to his monstrous endurance. The most powerful entities of the sacred races of Ether and Dark Sky were gazing at him, but Cain showed not even the slightest interest, instead staring at his bloody hand. The wound was already healing thanks to the power of the pseudo-immortal body, but the process was extremely slow and deficient due to the low amount of energy left in his body. A sharp light appeared in Cain's eyes the next second as a monstrously powerful red force field emerged from his mind. Awe flooded the eyes of the warriors of the sacred races. At the same time, a deep sense of dread and fear appeared in those of Dark Sky as they saw that massively powerful willpower, one so immense that it rose for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, clashing into the crystal wall.
A perfect mind over matter willpower.
Horus could not help but shout in shock. Just that willpower would be enough for Cain to break the mind of peak divine ascension masters, and by harnessing the power of the concepts through it, he could unleash abominable battle power.
It doesn't make sense. His willpower was special, but it was at the peak of the second realm. How could he have suddenly risen to the perfect third realm? That is impossible.
The shock and dread from the sudden event had managed to break Horus's focus, leaving his mind in utter turmoil. The next second, a force emerged from that monstrous red force field. It was a power that granted absolute and unwavering control over one's own mind and emotions, severing distractions, doubts, and external influences to achieve a state of perfect discipline and focus. Lord Kabuto and Lord Zanginis glanced at each other as they felt that power. They recognized it from their first encounter with Cain. However, it was at a completely different level right now, and things were just starting as the next second, the red force field flew back into Cain's body.
Order.
Cain shouted that single word as far red plasma tentacles emerged from his back and seemingly fused into the fabric of space.
Rumbled.
The warriors of the sacred races and the humanoids of Dark Sky could not believe what they saw. The entire world began to tremble, and billions of rainbow threads in the form of a spiderweb began to materialize around the Scarlet King. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred race were in absolute awe and wonder at the majestic rainbow spiderweb. Still, none of them understood what this phenomenon was. However, the aliens of Dark Sky did know it, and their hearts froze as they saw it. They could not believe that a young man from a seed world could summon this power that even the powerhouses of their world sought and craved.
Order of Life, 7 Virtue Flame.
Cain still showed no interest in the reaction of either party as he shouted those words, summoning a power that made the world tremble with even more strength. Although they were just words, the way they echoed and the intent behind them was clear to everyone who heard them. They felt a force that imposed order on the world, taking control of the power in that rainbow-colored spider web. Hundreds of rainbow threads began to glow, and the next second, a 7-colored flame covered Cain's body. The flame's power was like nothing the warriors of the sacred races had seen before, as it began to heal Cain's wounds and even recharge his lost life force. In less than 10 seconds, all the damage that Cain had received faded, his body and armor fully regenerated, and his life force completely healed. Only then did he begin to look around the battlefield, his eyes gazing at the warriors of the sacred races and the aliens of Dark Sky with the same indifference and aloofness.
Who among you has awakened me?
It was clear by now that the one that was in control of the body in the sky was not Cain Lorifa, but the ancient Red King. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 928, Order of Gluttony, Lord of the Flies.
Who among you has awakened me?
The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred races couldn't help but feel apprehensive as they heard those words and saw the young man's eyes. Although they were still baffled by what was happening, it was clear that the person speaking was someone else, not the Scarlet King. The warriors of the sacred races glanced at each other, trying to decide what to do. They knew too little about this new entity, but it was clear his power was monstrous. The problem was that they didn't know what type of relationship he had with the original Cain, or if he was an ally or foe. This new, unfathomable entity left Horus and the rest of the grand humanoids of Dark Sky equally perplexed. Although they had technically awakened him, they were also trying to destroy his body. Seeing no one dared to answer him, the Red King's eyes grew sharp as the plasma tentacles emerging from his back buried themselves even deeper into the fabric of space.
Order of Karma, True Heart. Rumbled.
The world trembled once more as a new set of rainbow threads began to glow. The Red King channeled their energy, and a wave expanded from his body, instantly reaching every warrior of the sacred races and the aliens of Dark Sky. The next second, both sides saw purple comic threads, representing their innermost emotions and intentions, emerge from their bodies, all connecting to the young man's body in the sky. The threads emerging from the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the warriors of the sacred races were charged with a white light that evoked devotion, respect, and reverence. On the other hand, the threads rising from the aliens of Dark Sky carried a dark light, evoking disdain, greed, and a cold, disgusting killing intent.
I see, so you are an enemy.
The Red King turned toward the aliens of Dark Sky. He showed no reaction upon discerning the emotions and intent in the hearts of the aliens, as if he didn't care in the slightest that they hated him to the core and wanted to take his life. However, when Horus and the rest of the aliens of Dark Sky saw the Red King grabbing the dark comic threads connected to their bodies, a sense of impending doom, a feeling that their lives were literally hanging by a thread, assaulted their hearts as if the Reaper's scythe loomed over their necks.
Wait, we are the ones who awakened you. We are part of the Dipravita race.
Horus shouted with all his strength, fear evident in his eyes as he felt closer to death than ever before in his entire life. The 6 grand humanoids of Dark Sky turned to their leader as he revealed their greatest secret, which should never be uttered. The punishment for disclosing that knowledge was more than they could bear. However, they couldn't really blame him. After all, their enemy was monstrous and held power they couldn't even comprehend.
You are part of the Dipravita race.
A flash of light and emotion appeared in the Red King's eyes for the first time since he awakened. Although it did not reach the level of fear, there was definitely caution in his eyes upon learning the origin of Horus and Dark Sky. Horus's eyes narrowed as he saw the young man's reaction, and a newfound sense of courage began to rise in his heart as it seemed this entity was aware of the Dipravita race and was cautious of them.
That's right. We are a world domination force under the command of High Lord Zeno, a third realm life form.
Taking advantage of his newfound courage, Horus continued speaking, trying to use his background to pressure the entity. Unfortunately for Horus, when the Red King heard him speak again, the flash of caution in his eyes faded, replaced by suspicion and coldness.
A Dipravita's world domination force. That doesn't make sense.
Horus was surprised by this response, and before he could speak again, the Red King grabbed one of the comic threads connecting to a humanoid of Dark Sky, and the eye on his forehead transformed monstrously. The humanoid of Dark Sky, whose comic thread was grabbed, felt utter terror invade his soul as the Red King's gluttony eye focused on him, but he couldn't move a single muscle and was completely at the monster's mercy. The Red King focused on the humanoid of Dark Sky as his plasma tentacles once more harnessed the power of the rainbow spiderweb.
Order of Gluttony, Lord of the Flies. Rumbled.
The world quaked with a force that surpassed all previous tremors as an unfathomable amount of energy coalesced above the Red King's form. In the next instant, a sight that struck terror and awe into the hearts of all unfolded billions upon billions of flies emerged from the gluttony's eye. Each fly evoked a sense of horror and devouring power, but their true might manifested as they gathered together, forming a massive demonic head with massive maws. It was hundreds of kilometers wide, with countless rows of sharp teeth secreting dark, disgusting black acid, a substance that could dissolve even the fabric of space. Pure terror appeared in the hearts of anyone who gazed at the horror. Just looking at it made them feel their souls would leave their bodies. They immediately looked away, but the humanoid of Dark Sky on whom the Red King had focused did not have that luxury. The alien watched in horror as the demonic maw began to inhale, drawing his entire body into it. It was like an ant being drawn to a gargantuan, ancient monster born out of nightmares.
Save me.
The humanoid of Dark Sky shouted in utter terror, but there was nothing anyone could do as the maw closed the next second. No one saw what happened to the alien, but it was clear that the fate he endured was countless times worse than death. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 929. You are challenging my authority. The Red King showed no sign of worry or concern for the emotions of the aliens of Dark Sky or the warriors of the sacred races. Waves of light crossed his eyes as he absorbed everything from the humanoid of Dark Sky consumed by the Lord of the Flies. The light coursing through the Red King's eyes lasted for a few seconds before finally stopping, allowing focus to return to his gaze. He then looked at Horus and the rest of the aliens of Dark Sky for a moment before doing something that left everyone dumbfounded.
Exactly how Horus.
A burst of laughter emerged from the Red King, causing his imposing and otherworldly aura to fade. However, it lasted only a few seconds before his emotionless eyes returned.
Ah, I must thank you. It is complicated for me to experience this sort of amusement.
The Red King showed a faint smile as he stared at Horus and the rest of the humanoids of Dark Sky before simply shaking his head.
A group of mutated sky demons calling themselves Dipravita. That's like a maggot calling itself a butterfly. It has been eons since I heard such stupidity.
The humanoids of Dark Sky glanced at each other in confusion, not understanding what the young man meant by mutated sky demon. Even the grand humanoids of dark sky were perplexed. However, Horus's reaction was different. He knew very well what those words meant, and despite the utter terror the entity in the sky provoked, the fanatic zeal in his heart pushed him to rage.
How dare you call us sky demons? Our origin is connected to the embodiment of samsara and the night of the seven sins.
The grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky turned toward Horus with inquisitive gazes. It was clear that he was aware of secrets from their race that went beyond their knowledge. The Red King's reaction was much different. The amusement on his face faded, replaced by utter apathy and boredom, as if he were looking at a child throwing a tantrum.
Embodiment of samsara and the night of the seven sins. You throw around those titles as if they were anything more than fables for your kind. Impossible, you know.
Horus's eyes widened as he heard those words, and a shocking train of thought arose as he stared at the monster in the sky. He did not dare to finish his words, as the implications behind them were too outrageous. The Red King could see how Horus' psyche trembled and sneered.
HMPH, if those two were to know you call yourselves depravitas, they would puke blood. The utopian idiot would just burn all of you, but the vengeful prick would make sure none of you could experience the release of death.
Horus's entire body began to tremble, and a sense of utter and absolute loss appeared in his eyes as he began to question one of his soul's deepest beliefs. The Red King lost all interest in Horus after uttering those words, his eyes instead turning toward the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred races. Immediately, the members of the 6 races grew tense, and fear struck their hearts. The Red King's eyes projected a sense of apathy that was hard to describe, not to mention the gargantuan entity made of billions of flies still hovering above his head. There was not a single shred of doubt in their minds that if he were to channel the power of that horror on them, none would be able to resist. The Red King stared at the group for a few seconds as a meaningful light appeared in his eyes. It lasted a second, yet they had a trail of powerful emotions.
Remain inside the light and heal there. If I see any of you step into the fog, I will consider you challenging my authority, and I will end your lives.
The warriors of the sacred races felt relief upon hearing those words, as if a demonic god was giving them mercy. However, while most retreated silently, a few remained in the dark fog.
You are challenging my authority.
The Red King's voice was eerily cold, and his eyes began to lose their light, causing the world around him to freeze. He recognized those who remained in the dark fog from the memories of the devoured humanoid of dark sky. While they were some of the most powerful warriors of the sacred races and influential figures in Ether that meant absolutely nothing to him. The collapsing Lightning Emperor, Lord Kabuto, the first collapsing lightning pillar, and many others who stood in the dark fog couldn't help but tremble as a sense of terror flooded their souls. Yet they stood firm.
What has happened to our king?
It took every ounce of will and determination in the collapsing Lightning Emperor's soul to utter those words as he stared at the entity in the sky. The Red King's eyes narrowed as, once again, a flood of emotions coursed through his eyes. He stared at the warriors who were hell-bent on their devotion to the Scarlet King. An annoyed expression soon appeared on his face as he focused on this group, and the flashes of emotional light coursing through his eyes grew stronger and more numerous. In the end, the Red King just sighed before shaking his head.
Ah, you will get your answer once I am finished. If you still dare to defy me, there will be no more mercy.
The collapsing Lightning Emperor stared at the entity in the sky for a moment before nodding and signaling for the others to return to the radiance of the anti-dark fog tower. There was no reason to be stubborn and die a pointless death, so they would wait to see what had truly happened to the Scarlet King. After all the warriors of the sacred races left the dark fog, the Red King turned his eyes once more to the aliens of dark sky and spoke in a chilling voice void of all emotions.
You are a good tempering tool, but you have annoyed me. This arc has extended too long, and all of you should fade from this world.
The Red King's voice echoed across the sky as the power of the demonic horror made of billions of flies burst, seemingly ready to devour all the aliens from dark sky. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 930. The Stars Are My Birthright. Horus and the rest of the humanoids of Dark Sky watched in horror as the horror made of billions of flues in the sky began to widen its demonic maws, seemingly ready to swallow them whole. No matter how much their instincts screamed for them to act, they could not run as karmic threads connecting their bodies to the Red King kept them immobilized. The truth was that even if they could move, none of them felt capable of resisting the devouring force of that ocean of flies. It was a feeling of utter impotence, something their victims know very well. Just as Horus and all the aliens were about to become food for the gargantuan horror in the sky, the rainbow spiderweb shook, breaking the connection of the plasma tentacles emerging from the Red King's back. The Red King's eyes widened as he felt his connection with the rainbow spider web break, causing the red light in his eyes to weaken dramatically. Immediately, the billions of flies in the sky began to explode, and his entire body trembled fiercely. Not even a second later, the threads connecting to the aliens of Dark Sky shattered, making the Red King's body tremble even more violently, and blood emerged from his mouth and eyes.
Backlash.
Horus's eyes widened as he saw the chain reaction assaulting the Red King's body and soul. He did not understand the power the man was using, but it was clearly not easy to manifest, and it seemed he had overexerted himself.
Attack now, it is our only chance.
A flash of determination and killing intent emerged from Horus's eyes as he shouted those words, awakening the rest of the aliens from their stupor and making them understand the critical nature of their situation.
AHHHHHH.
The aliens of Dark Sky exploded with killing intent and determination as they roared, all aware of what would happen if the monster in the sky summoned those powers again. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred races were taken aback by the sudden turn of events. The entity in the sky, who had seemed invincible, had suddenly endured a severe backlash, and the aliens were lunging at him from every direction with utter killing intent. Immediately, the warriors of the sacred races thought of marching into the dark fog and fighting, but before they could take a single step forward, the Red King turned toward them. His eyes were bloody, yet the intent was clear. They were to stay outside the dark fog no matter what. Although they were conflicted and did not want anything to happen to Cain, the warriors of the sacred races stood their ground. They were worried, but it was clear that the entity in the sky had power beyond their comprehension and should be able to handle this danger. After seeing that the warriors of the sacred races stood their ground, the Red King turned his focus toward the dozens of aliens marching toward him, full of killing intent. The only thing that emerged in his eyes was disdain before a monstrous golden light burst from them as he straightened his body. The grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky were masters of teamwork. Even with over 30 of them attacking simultaneously, they managed not to hinder each other, attacking from different angles and covering every escape route. Such a flawless and precise barrage of attacks should have been impossible to dodge, yet the Red King did it. His body moved like a shadow, as if no bones were inside him, and his eyes glowed with a ferocious golden light that predicted every move the enemies made. The aliens were attacking with all their power, and frustration appeared on their faces as they could not land a single blow on the Red King. Of course, while the Red King made it seem easy, he would receive a barrage of powerful strikes if he moved his body in the wrong direction by even half a millimeter, so his moves needed to be extremely fast and precise. It took immense focus just to dodge the strikes, and the Red King currently lacked the power to counterattack as his most powerful card, his Wilbur, had been temporarily wounded by the backlash. His eyes glowed with the power of the flow as he avoided all attacks, and at the same time, he went through every wisp of power and strength in his existence, trying to find a way to turn the tables. Suddenly, a flash of surprise appeared in the Red King's eyes as he discovered one of the key powers in his body. The power of the primordial race is inside this body. A burst of excitement appeared for a second in the Red King's eyes, but immediately, focus returned to his mind as he went through every aspect of the primordial path. Even while dodging the strikes of all the humanoids of Dark Sky, the Red King was able to analyze the development he had achieved, noticing how Cain had already reached the peak of the foundation stage and had been making strides into the ascension stage, but was still far from achieving success.
Using stellar meditation to align your spiritual energy with the pulsations of stars, and the flow of celestial currents and orbital alignment to synchronize your internal energy cycles with those of celestial bodies.
The aliens were confused as they heard the Red King utter those words while dodging all the attacks, but he did not care as he was speaking to himself. The Red King shook his head as he sighed, displaying supernatural skills to free himself from the aliens' entrapment and rise higher into the sky.
Why align and harmonize with them, asking for their power?
Only once he reached right beneath the crystal wall did the Red King gaze into the firmament, a flash of resolution appearing in his eyes as he shouted with absolute conviction.
The stars are my birthright.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 931, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, I.
The stars are my birthright.
Those words carried a sense of dominion and power that seemed to defy the universe. Shouting them was akin to demanding that the stars and the heavens submit to his will. The notion was startling and honestly kind of crazy, yet none of that mattered because it worked.
Rumbled.
Shock and dread appeared in the eyes of the aliens of Dark Sky as they saw the entire sky begin to tremble with such immense power that it seemed it would shatter at any second. Horus stared at the sky in terror, unable to comprehend what was happening. His horror only grew as he saw a flash of light in the sky.
A shooting star.
It was a beautiful cosmic phenomenon, yet Horus's instincts screamed for him to run and never look back. That sense of terror exploded as thousands of shooting stars appeared in the sky. A meteor shower. The Red King triggered a meteor shower, and not just any meteor shower. Every single one of those trails of starlight emanated power and force so pure and intense that it left both the aliens of Dark Sky and the warriors of the sacred races speechless. The warriors of the sacred races could not take their eyes off the beautiful and majestic phenomenon in the sky, but the aliens of Dark Sky immediately turned their focus to the young man in the highest sky. They felt the incredible and transcendent change happening in his body, soul, and energy. The Red King's existence began to pulsate in harmony with cosmic frequencies, as billions of threads of nebulous forces emerged from the astral sea beyond ether's crystal wall, and charged into his body, energy pools, and soul.
BOOMMMs.
A pillar of nebulous energy burst out of the Red King's body. He closed his eyes as he felt his existence resonate and integrate with the fundamental energies of the universe. It was just the beginning, and there was a long road ahead, but he had already taken the first step beyond his mortal shell, transforming into something akin to a true primordial life form. Horus, the Grand Humanoids, and the humanoids of Dark Sky knew they needed to attack the Red King, but they were paralyzed by fear and shock. No matter how powerful they were or how high the realm from which they came, they were facing an entity that went beyond their wildest imagination, and there was nothing more terrifying than the unknown. Unfortunately for them, the Red King showed no hesitation. As the nebulous force covered every inch of his body, soul, and energy pool, he extended his right hand. The spear of doom rose from the ground and flashed toward the Red King. As soon as the weapon appeared in his grip, he channeled all his strength into it before attacking.
Wrath of the Nine Hells.
The Red King's voice echoed across the dark fog as an arc of flaming dark energy, the size of a sector, emerged from the spear and came crashing down on the aliens. For the Grand Humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky, it felt like the sky had turned into fire and was falling toward them with a power that seemed ready to mark the end of all life.
BOOMMMs.
A cataclysmic explosion made the entire Atlas continent tremble as the arc of dark energy fell from the sky and crashed into the ground, sending waves of fire in all directions and burning everything around them. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the warriors of the sacred races saw the destruction take place inside the dark fog and could not help but be thankful that no one from their side ended up wounded. Of course, billions of drones from the insect army that inhabited those areas were burned to ashes, but they did not matter as the eyes of the warriors focused on the humanoids of Dark Sky. The nebula-infused wrath of the Nine Hells was incredibly powerful, but since it was spread so widely, it was not powerful enough to kill the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky. As those aliens rose from the flames, it was clear how badly injured they were. Thea was not a single one whose body was not riddled with deep burning wounds. Aten, the gargantuan humanoid of Dark Sky, rose from the ground. His eyes were full of shock and awe as he saw the sea of flames extending over the entire sector. The alien felt fear in his heart, but a flash of determination appeared in his eyes, and he knew they needed to do something. However, all that determination and valor froze as a small figure appeared right in front of his head the next second. Aten's eyes widened as crippling terror assaulted his soul, seeing the Red King staring directly into his eyes. The Red King's eyes were emotionless as the spear flashed forward toward the head of the gargantuan humanoid of Dark Sky. The spear seemed like a toothpick compared to the alien's massive skull, yet the moment it touched Aten's forehead, his entire head burst to pieces like a balloon full of blood. Absolute silence reigned across the dark fog as the aliens of Dark Sky saw that seemingly impossible strike. The fact that the Red King could kill a humanoid with a physical attack was not surprising, as he had done it before with Mika, but this was different. There was no monstrous power of the concepts in the spear. It did not even carry powerful momentum. It simply touched Aten's head, and it burst to pieces. It was simply impossible, yet it happened before their eyes, so they could not deny it, no matter how much they wanted to. The Red King's eyes remained apathetic after that performance of immense and invincible power. Even as Aten's gargantuan body began to glow, ready to self-destruct, he did not show any reaction or move a muscle. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 932, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, Another massive explosion shook the entire sector as Aten's gargantuan body self-destructed, sending the humanoids of Dark Sky nearby flying away. An alien resembling a defensive humanoid of Dark Sky managed to regain control after being flung by the explosion. However, not even a second later, his eyes widened in horror as he saw the Red King emerge from the flames and appear before him.
HEL.
The defensive humanoid of Dark Sky couldn't even finish his word before the tip of the spear touched his chest, making him immediately burst into pieces, leaving a massive hole where his internal organs should be. The alien's eyes were full of disbelief as his life ended before he could even process it, and just as his body began to glow ready to self-destruct, the Red King kicked him, sending him flying away. Once more, a massive explosion occurred inside the dark fog, and the aliens of Dark Sky witnessed that impossible display of power. The tip of the spear simply touched the chest of the defensive humanoid of Dark Sky, and everything burst to pieces. The terror in their souls paralyzed them as they couldn't comprehend what was happening, much less how to fight back. The Red King turned his apathetic eyes to the rest of the aliens, like a wolf watching a pack of sheep. Without the will to fight, what would ensue was not a battle but a slaughter. However, just as he was about to lunge toward the aliens and butcher them, a voice echoed.
He's charging all his energy into the tip of the spear and making it detonate as a kinetic blast.
Horus shouted with all his strength, his eyes burning with hatred and rage as he stared at the Red King. The man was still holding his entrails due to the hole in his stomach, but his soul and life were burning with power. When faced with information that could shatter their most deep-seated beliefs and a power that seemed to defy the rules of the world, most people would break, but some would draw power from despair and rise above it. Horus was clearly the latter. He had pushed his focus to the limit as he analyzed the Red King's moves and deciphered the key behind them, helping his kind. The grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky focused on the tip of the spear of doom, the terror in their hearts waning. Of course, its power and the principle behind it were shocking, but now that they understood it, fear no longer paralyzed them. The Red King saw the fighting spirit rising in the hearts of the aliens of Dark Sky, but his eyes showed nothing, as if it didn't matter whether the enemy fought back or not. However, the Red King did turn to Horus, impressed that the alien had figured out his silent strike so fast.
Good talent, I will kill you now.
Those words resembled a divine decree, an order from a higher entity that the world could not negate. As soon as the Red King's voice faded, he flashed toward Horus, while a gargantuan ocean of energy gathered at the tip of his spear. Horus's eyes widened as the speed of the Red King was even more impressive once he was the target. Before he could make a move, the entity was already in front of him, the spear piercing toward his chest. The wound from his last clash with Cain still hindered his movement, but he managed to move just in time to avoid the tip of the spear touching his chest. However, it still grazed his left arm, making it explode. Immense pain assaulted Horus as he lost his left arm, but he didn't have the luxury of losing focus. The Red King charged the Spear of Doom again, preparing to strike, and this time he wouldn't miss. Luckily for Horus, before the Red King could charge his spear again, the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky lunged forward, full of killing intent and battle will, now that they had overcome their crippling fear. The Red King's eyes narrowed as he saw the dozens of aliens lunging toward him from every direction, forcing him to stop the charge of his Spear of Doom. The kinetic blast strike was immensely powerful, but it also required precise and overwhelming focus, something extremely hard to achieve while dodging several attacks coming from different directions. Horus couldn't help but smile as he saw all the aliens marching forward, full of battle will. But it didn't last long as a powerful kick landed on his lower jaw the next second, shattering it and sending him flying away. After sending Horus flying away with a kick, the Red King's eyes burst with golden light, and in his mind, the attack pattern of every single alien appeared. His body twisted at strange angles, dodging 3 attacks before waving his spear to the side with all his strength, sending 4 humanoids of Dark Sky flying away with deep and bloody wounds. The martial skill of the Red King was nothing short of transcendent, with a single motion taking care of the attacks from 7 humanoids of Dark Sky. However, his spear strike still left him open, and 2 aliens took advantage of that, each connecting a ferocious blow. One humanoid of Dark Sky connected a kick to the neck, while a grand humanoid of Dark Sky landed a ferocious punch to the chest, and smiles appeared on their faces. Yet their satisfaction was short-lived as their eyes widened, feeling their arms and legs tremble as if they had just struck the heaviest metal in the world. After achieving the Primordial Path's ascension stage, the physical endurance of the Red King was nothing less than that of an entire continent. It would take much more than a few blows to really wound him. And even if that were to happen, his pseudo-immortal body would immediately heal everything. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 933, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, EI. The Red King moved with deadly grace, the Spear of Doom flashing at such an inhuman speed that it became nothing but a blur in the eyes of the aliens. His eyes focused on the humanoid of Dark Sky, who had kicked his neck before bringing his spear down in a mighty arc. The blade bit deep into the alien's chest, sending her sprawling to the ground with a gaping wound. Without pausing for a moment, the Red King swung his free arm in a brutal backhand, connecting with the chest of the grand humanoid of Dark Sky that had punched him.
BOOMMMs.
The impact of the Red King's backhand was tremendous. It caved in the alien's chest and launched him backward, tumbling through the air before crashing into the ground with a thunderous impact. That display of power would have made any other force run away, but this battle was far from over. The aliens of Dark Sky surged forward, their eyes burning with primal fury as they lunged toward the Red King. The 4 he had initially struck down were already back on their air, ready to rejoin the assault. The Red King's eyes narrowed as he tapped into the flow. Time seemed to slow around him as he read the movements of his foes. He ducked under a wild swing from one alien, his spear slicing through the air to sever the arm of a grand humanoid of Dark Sky.
Alright.
The alien roared in agony, black blood spraying through the air, only for a ferocious kick to land on his jaw the next second, sending him flying away. Not even a second later, the Red King spun on his heel, delivering a devastating roundhouse kick to another humanoid of Dark Sky that had tried to sneak up behind him. His feet connected with the alien's head, and he felt the crunch of bones shattering under the force of his blow. The humanoid of Dark Sky's eyes trembled under the ferocious power of that kick, and several bones in his head shattered before he hurtled through the air without control. While that attack was not fatal, the damage was undoubtedly severe. More and more attacks came from the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky, but the Red King responded to everything with flawless technique and pure brutality. Every movement the Red King made was a blend of precision and power. He twisted and turned, dodging strikes that would have killed anyone else in Ether, and countering with lethal efficiency. The Spear of Doom became an extension of his will, striking with pinpoint accuracy to exploit any weakness in his opponents. One humanoid of Dark Sky leaped at him, claws extended, but he caught it midair with a thrust of his spear, impaling the alien's right elbow. With a swift motion, he twisted the spear, shattering all the flesh and bones around it, before sending the alien flying away with a ferocious kick, blood spraying everywhere. Even as he fought, the Red King was constantly aware of his surroundings, keeping part of his focus on every single one of the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky. He even used the aliens as shields, moving around the battlefield in perfect control, occasionally disrupting their teamwork, allowing his attacks to carry even more brutality and produce even more damage. The Red King was a whirlwind of destruction. Despite the incredible numerical disadvantage, he dominated the battlefield, every attack leaving deep and severe wounds on the aliens. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the warriors of the sacred races observed the clash from a distance, encased in the radiant light of the anti-dark fog tower, not daring to take a single step into the battlefield, as the warning of the Red King was still clear in their minds. The warriors of the sacred races' expressions of awe and shock were unmistakable as they watched the extraordinary spectacle unfold before them. It was unlike anything Ether had ever seen before, and nothing remotely similar had ever occurred in the history of any of their empires. Even when confronted by more than 30 formidable aliens, the Red King dominated the battlefield with unwavering power. His every movement was a masterclass in martial skill, each spear strike delivering immense strength and utter brutality, all aimed at vital points. The battlefield was his domain, and he was filling it with the blood of the aliens of Dark Sky. Yet, no matter how much the warriors of the sacred races hated to admit it, the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky fought with a battle power and ferocity that shocked them to the core. At the beginning of their clash, the fear and dread that the Red King instilled in their hearts paralyzed them. But after overcoming it with Horus's help, they were showing their true might. Despite the lethal precision of the Red King's attacks, these aliens showed no hesitation. They launched their assaults from every conceivable angle, using every ounce of strength in their flesh and blood. Their coordinated efforts and unshakable courage created a palpable pressure on the battlefield. Though the aliens of Dark Sky couldn't land a decisive blow on the Red King, their relentless attacks disrupted his rhythm, preventing him from unleashing his most devastating techniques. The warriors of the sacred races watched in amazement as the Red King, despite his overwhelming power, was held at bay by the sheer tenacity of his opponents, incapable of delivering a lethal blow. For 10 grueling minutes, the battle raged on without another casualty among the aliens of Dark Sky. The warriors of the sacred races could hardly believe it, as even they would not be able to endure so well against the monster that was the Red King. The collapsing Lightning Emperor's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. The Red King was a monster whose power was immeasurable. Still, it was clear that the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky were a formidable force, and their prowess on the battlefield showed that the tidal world domination force was not mere words. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 934, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, IV. The Red King's eyes remained cold and emotionless as he faced the aliens of Dark Sky. Their combined efforts, teamwork, and battle tactics created pressure that hindered him from landing fatal blows and taking more lives, but that did not alter the inevitable outcome. His relentless attacks with the Spear of Doom inflicted increasing damage on the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky. No matter how ferocious their resistance was, It was only a matter of time before their wounds reached a critical point, crippling their battle strength, breaking their formations, and allowing him to start reaping their lives. The Red King was unconcerned about how long this would take. Having evolved to the Ascension stage, his stamina, energy pool, and endurance had reached unprecedented levels. He could maintain this intensity for several hours without tiring. Considering that in just 10 minutes he had already severely wounded more than 5 of the aliens, they would all fall before he was exhausted. What did impact the Red King was the aliens' mental resilience and endurance. They must know they will die if the battle continues like this, yet they remain firm and steady, not relenting in their attack or running away. I have to admit, that is impressive. The Red King had to recognize that a force willing to fight to the death in a losing battle out of pure determination and will was impressive. However, a sharp and meaningful light crossed his eyes the next second as he analyzed the battlefield. We are moving. Each of them was a life form capable of flying at a frightening speed, so it was not so shocking that they would be moving as they battled. However, the Red King noticed how they were not blindly moving, but there was a clear direction in their trajectory. The next second, the Red King's eyes scanned the battlefield, for the first time not focusing on the aliens attacking him. He immediately noticed the presence of a grand humanoid of dark sky without an arm and a gaping hole in his stomach. Horus was several hundred kilometers ahead, high in the sky, watching the fight with immense focus. He was far enough to be out of the immediate reach of the Red King, but able to observe every single inch of the battlefield. Realization dawned upon the Red King as he accessed the memories of the devoured humanoid of dark sky. So, they are running back to Lovecraft City, he thought, his eyes sharpening as he grasped the aliens' plan. They fought with immense ferocity not to leave behind a glorious tale, but because they were desperate to survive. Simply fleeing would have been suicidal. The Red King was faster than any of them and would have hunted them down one by one, killing them all before they reached the headquarters. By working together and fighting with all their might, they could push the battlefield back to their domain. It was their only true path to return to Lovecraft City, and once they were there, the situation would shift in their favor. By this point, it was clear that all the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky were Depravitas. Once back in Lovecraft City, they could discard their concealing armor and reveal their true forms. At that point, they would be able to deploy physical bodies even stronger than the ones they currently had, and more importantly, unleash the power of the concept, exponentially increasing their battle power and survival skills. The mastermind behind this plan was undoubtedly Horus, guiding the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky. Using the fight to retreat, the Red King mused, a small smile briefly touching his lips at the alien's ingenuity. But in the next instant, his apathy returned, and he unleashed a renewed surge of strength and brutality in his attacks. The Red King didn't really have a way to stop them from moving the battlefield, but he could burst with killing intent and supercharge his attacks, making sure to kill as many of them as possible before they could reach Lovecraft City and Atlas. Horus saw how the Red King's rampage went into overload and clenched his teeth with rage. He had done his best to hide their goal, but it was clear by now that the monster had managed to figure out what was happening.
Damn it, how could he do it so fast?
The alien shouted with hatred and wrath, but no matter what, he could not lose control as his guidance was the only thing keeping the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky alive. He pushed all those dark emotions down as his eyes glowed, restoring the mental communication with the aliens and guiding the move of every one of them, driving their teamwork to the next level.
B-O-O-O-M-M-M-M-Ms. B-A-O-O-O-O-O. Z-N-N-N-N-N-N.
Explosions, sonic blasts, and space sundering echoed across the dark fog as the battle moved deeper into Atlas. The Red King attacked with absolute ferocity, and his energy burst higher and higher. His spear left deep and ghastly wounds on the aliens, cutting pieces of the enemy's bodies. The aliens' blood spread everywhere as more and more wounds appeared on them, yet they continued fighting with everything they had. They had moved for less than 15 minutes when the Red King's eyes glowed sharply. He moved his body to the side while driving the spear of doom forward with immense power and momentum, piercing the chest of a humanoid of dark sky that had attempted to strike him. Shock appeared in the humanoid of dark sky's eyes as it saw the spear inside his chest, only for the Red King to twist the weapon, destroying all his internal organs.
B-O-O-O-O.
The humanoid's body exploded from within, the force of the blast sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Red King didn't pause. He spun around, using the momentum to decapitate another alien with a swift, precise slash. The headless body fell to the ground, black blood pooling around it before it exploded.
The
death of 2 humanoids of dark sky in a row marked the beginning of the carnage. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 935, The Red King vs. Dark Sky v. How can a monster like this exist in a seed world? We are part of the Depravita race, yet he is playing with us as if we were mere toys. Horus clenched his teeth, the rage and hatred that defined his existence bursting with even greater intensity as he watched 2 more humanoids of dark sky fall, knowing they would not be the last. The grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky had suffered too many severe and crippling wounds, with the spear of doom claiming many of their limbs, diminishing their battle power with each exchange. In stark contrast, the Red King showed not even the slightest wound on his body. His energy pool burned with the intensity of a small star. As the battle raged on, it was no surprise that casualties continued to mount for the dark sky forces. If Horus was honest, he did not really care about the lives of the humanoids of dark sky, and even most of the grand humanoids of dark sky were nothing more than powerful pawns he could use and discard as he saw fit. What truly wrecked his ego and mind, torturing him from the inside, was the agony of loss that fueled his fury and deepened his sense of impotence. Despite his seething anger and mounting despair, Horus knew they needed to keep fighting and retreating, heading back to Lovecraft City. It was their only hope for at least some of them to survive against this monstrous foe. Horus's eyes glowed with fierce determination and deep-seated fury as he continued to command the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky, desperately trying to forge them into a cohesive force against the Red King, increasing their chances of survival. The Red King made sure to keep a fragment of his focus on Horus at all times. The man was the leader of the aliens and the one commanding them in this clash, so it was essential to keep an eye on him. If possible, the Red King would have liked to kill Horus immediately, as that would make the fight much easier, but it was not so simple. The onslaught from the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky restricted his movements, and Horus always kept a safe distance. How bothersome! A flash of anger at the alien in the sky appeared in the Red King's eyes, but even that primal and basic emotion immediately turned off, replaced by a sense of utter apathy as he continued fighting and killing. A towering and imposing grand humanoid of dark sky charged at him with a raw, the alien's massive fists aiming to crush his skull. The Red King met its assault head-on, his spear a blur as it parried the giant fists. The Red King was ready to deliver a final blow, but a wisp-like arm from a humanoid of dark sky flashed at the back of his head, forcing him to duck to avoid the attack and drive his spear into the grand humanoid's abdomen instead of the head. The grand humanoid staggered as the Red King twisted the spear inside his body. His face contorted in agony before the Red King yanked the spear free and brought it crashing down on the creature's skull, blasting him to the ground. Even the grand humanoids of dark sky, considerably more powerful than the humanoids, could not endure the power of the Red King. Still, the aliens of dark sky fought with unwavering determination, knowing there was no other choice unless they all wanted to die. Horus coordinated the aliens' attacks to keep the pressure on and give the wounded time to recover. The Red King responded with a whirlwind of lethal strikes, his spear cutting through the air with deadly precision. He spun and twirled, his movements fluid and seamless. Each strike found its mark, and black blood splattered all over the sky. A humanoid of dark sky lunged at him from the side, her claws extended, sharper than a saint treasure. The Red King did not even turn to the woman, as the flow told him everything he needed to know. He sidestepped and delivered a brutal kick to the humanoid's midsection, sending her flying and breaking several of her bones. Another alien tried to take advantage of the momentary distraction, aiming a kick at his spine, but the Red King was faster. He thrust his spear backward without looking, impaling the attacker through the throat before twisting it. The revolving fosse of the Spear of Doom separated the head from the rest of the humanoid's body. Like all other aliens, his entire body burst into a massive fiery explosion after his fall. The explosion was so powerful that it disrupted the alien's battle formation. The Red King emerged from the fiery energy before lunging toward one of them, bisecting the enemy in two with his spear. Horus clenched his fist so tightly that it bled as he saw the death of two more humanoids of dark sky. He immediately communicated with the aliens, forcing them to regroup and coordinate as they kept moving deeper into Atlas Vasta. The battle raged on, the Red King's energy never waning. He was always one step ahead, anticipating their moves and countering with devastating efficiency. He fought with a blend of martial prowess and raw power, each move calculated to inflict maximum damage, using the flow to predict the moves of the dozens of aliens. His dominion over the Spear of Doom was beyond superb, as it resembled an extension of his arm, striking with unerring accuracy. Although the Red King's powers during this carnage seemed mystical and obscure, seemingly coming from his previous life, the truth was that other than his willpower, he could not bring anything else from his previous existence into the fight. The Red King used his powerful body, energy, and laws at such a pure and advanced level that they manifested as nothing more than martial strikes, a state of granular control that Cain was not even close to attaining. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 936, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, Vi. As the battle raged on, the Red King noticed a particularly ferocious grand humanoid of dark sky. The alien had made his best effort to hide his presence and diminish the attention brought, but the Red King could see he was the strongest of the group and the one that generated the most significant pressure during the battle. This grand humanoid of dark sky constantly attacked at the right moment and with immense speed and overwhelming strength, preventing the Red King from taking lives. A sharp light appeared in the Red King's eyes as his energy began to rise. Taking down the strongest aliens would be crucial to butchering them all. With a powerful detonation of movement and speed, the Red King burst forward, pushing away all the aliens in his path and closing the distance between him and the powerful grand humanoid of dark sky. His energy flowed through the Spear of Doom, ready to kill.
Damn it!
Horus shouted in rage and frustration as he saw the Red King targeting that grand humanoid of dark sky. He had done his best to keep the man from standing out while using the alien's power to suppress the Red King, but now the cat was out of the bag. Immediately, Horus realigned the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky to block the Red King's path, but it was too late. The monster simply sent all the aliens flying away and appeared right before his prey, his emotionless eyes full of brutality. The grand humanoid's eyes widened as he saw the Red King before him, and his physical power rose to a new level. It didn't matter if the enemy was an entity beyond measure. He would not simply lay down and accept his fate. He swung his hands in a deadly arc. The hands of the grand humanoid of dark sky resembled two blades, each aiming at the Red King's neck, intending to separate his head from his body. The physical might behind them was so immense that space was sundered. The Red King's eyes glowed with the golden light of the flow as he analyzed every movement and pattern of the attack, knowing the perfect way to counter it. He dodged to the side, his spear slicing through the air to sever the creature's hands.
H.
The alien bellowed in pain, black blood spurting from the wound. The scream didn't last long as the Red King drove his spear into the alien's head, blasting the back of his skull and killing him.
Zarumand.
Horus roared as he saw the explosion of the strongest of the grand humanoids. That man was his most powerful and trusted general in this invasion, and now he was gone. His eyes barely regained focus when he saw how the Red King emerged from the blast with another humanoid of dark sky impaled on the Spear of Doom. The humanoid's eyes widened in shock, her body trembling as she lost all her strength due to the lethal wounds. The Red King's emotionless eyes gazed into those of the alien as he twisted the spear and pulled it free. the lifeless body collapsing before bursting.
Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it.
Horus roared in overwhelming rage as he saw another explosion. His mind barely contained his wrath as he continued guiding the aliens back to Lovecraft City in Atlas. As they marched deeper into the dark fog, the casualties among the dark sky forces continued to mount due to Zaruman's critical loss. Each step closer to their stronghold was paid for in blood, with more and more aliens falling to the relentless onslaught of the Red King. Horus' eyes were bloodshot, the hatred and impotence he felt driving him to the brink of madness. But he pressed on, knowing that reaching Lovecraft City was their only hope for survival. "I will kill you! I will kill you! I will kill you! I will kill you!" Horus repeated in his mind over and over, swearing to obtain retribution as he continued guiding the aliens. The Red King could sense the hatred and loathing of the aliens, but couldn't care less. He continued attacking as a whirlwind of destruction, his spear a blur as it cleaved through the bodies of his enemies. He moved with deadly precision, each strike a calculated blow to cripple and kill. The grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky fought with desperate ferocity. Still, they were no match for the Red King's overwhelming power, especially with their numerical advantage constantly decreasing. Limbs were severed, torsos impaled, and heads decapitated as he carved a path of devastation through their ranks. The air was thick with the stench of blood and death, the screams of the dying echoing across the dark landscape, along with the massive explosions from the self-destruction of their corpses. The Red King moved incredibly fast, his spear flashing in the dim light as he struck down another humanoid of Dark Sky, shattering his skull. Black blood sprayed from the wound as the alien fell, his body twitching in its final moments before triggering a massive explosion.
The
Red King spun through the flaming energy, catching another alien off guard and cleaving this one in two. The humanoid of Dark Sky's eyes were full of shock before his entire body exploded. Despite their desperate efforts, the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky were being systematically slaughtered. The Red King no longer resembled a humanoid, but a cosmic force, his relentless assault leaving no room for mercy or reprieve. Horus felt he was going mad as he saw how the massive force he brought into this world after thousands of years of preparation was reduced to but a mere third of their original number, all due to a single person. The only thing that saved his mind and will from breaking was that they had finally reached their goal. The alien's eyes glowed as he focused on the underground of their current location. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 937, The Red King vs. Dark Sky, Vir. Now or never, Horus's eyes blazed with an unyielding determination, his every muscle straining with the power of his vitality as he fought to contain the horrific wounds on his stomach. With a flash of movement, he hurled himself into the heart of the battle. The Red King's eyes narrowed with calculated anticipation as he observed Horus's movement. He welcomed the alien's entry into the fight, knowing it would provide an opportunity to eliminate him. But he was not fooled by Horus's seemingly desperate attack. They were, after all, above the terrain where Lovecraft City lay concealed. Let's eliminate him first. If there was one alien that needed to be eradicated, it was Horus. But just as that thought crossed the Red King's mind, he saw all the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky that were still alive regroup and march directly toward him with a determination that bordered on the suicidal. The aliens' march left them full of openings, but it also carried such devastating pressure that the Red King would have a hard time enduring it. Immediately, the Red King's eyes burst with brutality as his energy exploded, gathering in his spear as he clashed directly with over a dozen aliens marching toward him.
Wrath of the Nine Hells.
A powerful flaming energy beam emerged from the Spear of Doom as the Red King drove the weapon forward. The grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky immediately executed evasive maneuvers, doing their best to dodge the energy beams. Still, two of them were too slow and were struck point blank. The power of the Wrath of the Nine Hells was so immense that their entire bodies were incinerated to ash, leaving nothing behind to trigger an explosion. Undeterred by the horrific deaths of their comrades, the remaining grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky surged forward. Their attacks were a synchronized onslaught, relentless and unyielding. Blades, claws, and sonic blasts filled the air, each aimed to overwhelm the Red King. They resembled a pack of hungry wolves as they lunged toward the Red King, yet he showed not the slightest sense of worry. The golden light of the flow coursed through his eyes as he tightened his grip on the Spear of Doom, his movements fluid and precise, effortlessly weaving through the onslaught. A massive explosion rocked the sky as the Red King dodged several blows and struck with his spear, dispatching 3 of the aliens with a level of martial skill and power that defied logic. He was ready to take care of the others when a figure that had managed to hide from his sight appeared before him. The Red King's eyes narrowed as he saw Horus. The alien had done an excellent job using the bodies of the rest of the grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky to hide his presence. It was the only way to face someone who had mastered the flow. Horus's eyes burned with rage as he unleashed a ferocious punch to the Red King's chest, carrying all his strength.
BOOMMMs.
The punch landed with a bone-crushing impact, echoing through the battlefield and sending the Red King flying away for thousands of meters.
Now.
After connecting his attack and momentarily hindering the Red King's movement, Horus immediately shouted, making all the remaining aliens burn with determination as they flashed down with every ounce of power they had left in their bodies.
BOOMMMs.
The grand humanoids and humanoids of Dark Sky dived into the ground with such power and momentum that they pulverized the earth on their path, generating a massive hole around them as they marched to their destination. The Red King's eyes glowed as he saw Horus and the rest marching into the underground, heading to Lovecraft City.
Crack.
He twisted in midair, using the momentum to launch himself toward the aliens with blinding speed, shattering the fabric of space on his path, the energy coursing through the Spear of Doom bulging and rising higher and higher. Although the Red King would have preferred to kill all of them, now that they were so close to Lovecraft City, that was impossible. His eyes focused on a single target, the brutality in them freezing the air. Horus was pulverizing the ground on his path when his eyes widened. He felt his instincts screaming, warning him of immense danger approaching. It wasn't hard for the alien to notice the Red King flashing down, aiming at him. Faster, 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 Horus repeated in his mind as he dived with even greater strength and speed. His eyes glowed as he finally perceived the small dimensional sphere. Lovecraft City? Pure thrill filled Horus's heart as he saw the dimension less than 1,000 meters away. That distance was less than a blink of an eye for him, even with his power sealed by the armor. Yet, just as Horus thought he would make it, he noticed the Red King's energy explode, and the monster dived with even greater speed, the Spear of Doom flashing like a shooting star, and the target was none other than him. I will not make it. It would take him a fraction of a second to enter the dimension, but Horus knew the spear would pierce his head before that. In that heartbeat of despair, a brutal and cold light ignited in Horus's eyes. He grabbed a nearby grand humanoid of Dark Sky who had been smiling, thinking that salvation was finally at his reach. The alien's expression turned to confusion and horror as Horus thrust him into the Red King's path. The Red King didn't flinch. He knew maneuvering around the grand humanoid would give Horus the time to escape. So he drove forward, the Spear of Doom obliterating the alien in a fiery explosion.
BOOMMMs.
The blast rocked the air, but the Red King was undeterred. He bore down on Horus, the Spear of Doom inches from its target. The world seemed to slow, the point of the spear a hair's breadth from piercing Horus's skull. And then, in a blink, Horus vanished. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 938, The Red King and the Old Man. The Red King's eyes widened as he saw Horus vanish, and a flash of rage appeared on his face. Fury erupted as he realized the aliens had escaped his hunt. In the next second, he twisted his body to the side and, without losing momentum, hurled the Spear of Doom, piercing the head of a humanoid of Dark Sky about to enter the dimension. The alien had been thrilled, thinking she would survive, but the spear blasted her head like a balloon full of blood, triggering a massive explosion. By the time the flaming energy vanished, only the Red King remained. While he couldn't see anything with the naked eye, he used the flow to detect the disturbances in the natural cause of the world, identifying the dimensional sphere that held Lovecraft City. The Red King's eyes returned to their apathetic state, devoid of any emotion, as he stared at the dimensional sphere containing Lovecraft City. He extended his hand, summoning the Spear of Doom back to his grip, and charged it with all his energy and nebulous force.
Wrath of the Nine Hells.
A torrent of flaming energy emerged from the Spear of Doom, and under the Red King's control, it all gathered at the tip in the next second as he drove the spear forward. The moment the Spear of Doom struck the dimensional sphere, a massive explosion took place, sending the Red King flying with such force that he was almost thrust back into the sky. The Red King regained control over his body within seconds, yet a mouthful of blood emerged just as he stabilized. A sharp light appeared in the eyes of the Red King as he saw the blood and perceived the internal damage that the clash had generated in his body. Of course, all the wounds faded the next second, thanks to his pseudo-immortal body, but he now understood that destroying Lovecraft City from the outside required much more strength than he currently had. What an interesting invention. I guess that even if these aliens are only a paw copy of the Prima Depravita race, they are still very advanced. A meaningful light appeared in the eyes of the Red King as he gazed once more at the dimensional sphere, analyzing it more thoroughly. In a few moments, the Red King came to a conclusion. He could not break it from the outside, but nothing could stop him from entering inside and continuing the fight. However, inside Lovecraft City, he would face the Depravitas in their true form, enhanced by the power of the Dark Dimension and the Ancient Key. Despite the incredibly harsh battle that would take place if he entered Lovecraft City, there was no fear in the eyes of the Red King. However, neither was their interest, as whether or not the aliens were still alive was meaningless to him.
You could end this now, free the world from their darkness.
A voice echoed behind the Red King. There had been no presence beside him in this place, yet he showed not even the slightest surprise as he turned around to see an old man with white hair, a long beard, and a large belly. If Kane were to see the old man, he would immediately recognize him as the one who gave him the starry gem with the secret to jewel cultivation in Kronos, and drew a portrait of him when he reached the Hyperion continent. The old man's figure was blurry, like an unstable virtual image that could fade at any second. Still, one could see the expression on his face, which was full of tiredness and weakness, as if a severe and crippling illness assailed him. The Red King stared at the old man, his eyes void of emotions as he spoke, his voice full of apathy.
Why would I do that?
The old man was at a loss for words for a moment as he heard that response, and he could not help but utter the first thought that came to his mind.
You will be the hero of the world and save trillions of lives. You overestimate your importance. I am a master of order and do not care about this world and its people.
The Red King paused as a flash of melancholy appeared in his eyes.
I do not care about anything.
The Red King's sadness lasted a fraction of a second, his eyes returning to apathy as he turned to the dimensional sphere.
I plan to butcher them since this play has taken too long, but now only the final clash is left. The boy should lead the people of this world and take care of this. After all, he is your singularity.
The old man stared at the Red King for a few seconds, and it seemed he wanted to say something else, but in the end, he shook his head and sighed.
You are right. Ether's problems should be handled by the people of Ether.
The Red King noticed how the old man's figure vanished after those words, leaving him alone, but showed no concern. His apathy seemed impenetrable, a fortress of indifference that no plea or argument could breach. The old man's frail figure and words did not affect the soul of the Master of Order. His eyes glanced at the dimensional sphere that contained Lovecraft City one last time before rising into the sky and flashing to the south, leaving the north of Atlas. It did not take long for the Red King to reach the Anti-Dark Fog Tower, which was full of sacred races warriors waiting for him, but to the shock of the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest, he did not stop and continued marching south. Only after reaching Infinite Horizon did the Red King stop his march, standing silent as he closed his eyes. The next second, a red humanoid appeared inside his soul sea, his eyes immediately turning to a distant location. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 939, The Red King and Apex. The psychic embodiment of the Red King began to move through the Soul Sea, advancing through different layers of spacetime. Kane's Soul Sea was unique in many ways, but its most distinctive characteristic was its enormous size. Even a third-realm life form would find it nearly impossible to explore every inch, much less reach the deepest corner of it unless they knew the way. After nearly 15 minutes of flying through a sea of Soul Foss, the Red King reached an empty area devoid of any trace of energy or spirit wave. In this place, space itself seemed to twist, pushing away anyone who approached without their notice, but that could not affect the Red King's psychic embodiment. The Red King looked around the area, and at first sight, there was nothing in this place, only emptiness, but he knew that was not true. His physical embodiment remained steady for a few seconds before trembling, only to fall into a bottomless abyss the next second. As he transitioned from one layer of space to another, the dimension began to change, and the barren terrain was replaced by the sight of a majestic gate larger than a world covered in chains of purple fire and black-white lightning. A complicated expression appeared on the Red King's face as he saw the gargantuan gate, and he could not help but sigh as he stared at the cracks in it. However, he did not waste much time and turned his eyes toward the golden humanoid guarding it. Apex stared at the Red King's physical embodiment for a few seconds before finally sighing.
"Oh, how much do you remember?" "I remember enough. This isn't like the first time I awoke with fragmented memories and no understanding of what's happening."
The Red King spoke in an apathetic tone, before brutality and coldness emerged from his eyes.
"You guided the boy into the power of order."
Apex trembled as he heard those words and felt the Red King's gaze. Despite the physical manifestation being extremely weak, he knew very well what kind of entity he was dealing with and the consequences of drawing his ire. The golden humanoid took a deep breath, enduring the crushing pressure before focusing on the Red King, his voice solemn and decisive.
Kane's mind and psyche suffered a terrible blow that he was too young to face. I needed to help him survive that tribulation.
Apex paused, his face growing resolute as he continued.
He is important.
The Red King's coldness and brutality intensified upon hearing Apex's words, making the pressure on the golden humanoid much worse. However, those emotions soon faded, once again replaced by apathy.
I know the boy's importance. That's why I implanted a piece of my will and mental force during the creation of his alter ego.
The Red King paused before continuing with a voice full of indifference.
But the only reason I truly acted was because I sensed he had already taken a step into the power of chaos.
Eventually, the Red King sighed, an expression of boredom appearing on his face.
The boy is important and on the right path toward his ultimate goal. But if he fails, then he should simply fade. We will start over. Time is the one thing I have.
Apex clenched his fists upon hearing those words, a complicated expression appearing on his face, but in the end, he nodded, not daring to utter a word. The Red King's eyes narrowed at the reaction of the golden humanoid, but soon lost interest and continued.
I will now heal his mind and reverse the damage caused by the mind-severing ritual.
A smile appeared on Apex's face as he heard that, and he felt relief. He could crush any soul incursion into Kane's soul sea, but the power the Depravita race used was much more obscure. The system spirit could not stop or reverse it, so he was glad the Red King would do it. The Red King showed no reaction to Apex's relief as he continued in a cold voice.
When he wakes up, he will come looking for answers. You can handle that as you see fit. I do not care. However, I made it clear that this would be the last time I intervened. If he fails to endure and overcome the tribulations that will arise in the future, I will let him die.
Apex's relief turned to a grim determination as he nodded, understanding the weight of the Red King's words. He was already feeling exhaustion coming over him. knowing that Cain would want to know what was happening with his mind and soul. There was no way to hide things this time, as the warriors of the sacred races all saw the Red King's actions, and they would definitely share that with the young man. The physical embodiment of the Red King glanced at the gate one more time, focusing on the cracks in it before sighing and allowing his mind to leave the soul sea. When he opened his eyes in infinite horizon, he immediately noticed the hundreds of warriors of the sacred races gazing at him. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the powerhouses of the sacred races had returned to infinite horizon when they heard that the entity was in the sky with his eyes closed. They were at a loss on how to proceed, wanting to help Cain but not wanting to fight the entity. The entity was immensely powerful, capable of crushing the aliens of Dark Sky, and even if they somehow managed to overcome him, harming the entity would not help Cain. Luckily for the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the others, the Red King did not leave them in suspense.
The boy's mind will heal and wake up soon. I have crippled the power of Dark Sky, killing 2/3 of them and pushing them back to their headquarters. They will heal fast, but it will be at least a month before they make a move. Do with that information as you see fit.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 940, The Scarlet King's Power of Chaos. After sharing his knowledge with the powerhouses of the sacred races, the Red King lost all interest in them. Whether they chose to seize this opportunity to expand their dominion over Atlas, intensify the pressure on Dark Sky, or retreat into cowardice was of no consequence to him. His indifference stemmed not only from apathy, but also from a deeper understanding that their actions would influence Cain's journey as a master of the power of chaos. Without another thought for the sacred races, the Red King assumed a meditative position in the sky. He began to harmonize with the laws and forces permeating infinite horizon, immersing himself in the profound energies that flowed through the world. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the rest of the powerhouses of the sacred races glanced at each other as they looked at the entity in the sky, waiting in silence. They did not believe the man was lying, but they would not simply trust his word and disperse. The warriors wanted to keep an eye on him until they saw a sign that the Scarlet King was fine. The Red King had chosen this place because the laws here were much more developed and pure than any other place on Gaia, which would help his task. His eyes began to glow with the golden light of the flow, and the next second, that light transformed into waves of cosmic energy. The power of the flow had always intrigued Cain. It granted him the ability to deploy incredible martial skills, read his enemies' moves, counter physical attacks, and redirect spells. Yet, he knew he had barely scratched the surface of its true potential. On the other hand, the Red King had already developed and mastered the flow to a level that could defy the laws of the universe. Of course, understanding something and being able to use it were very different things, and the amount of energy he had at his disposal was very limited, forcing him to be ingenious. The Red King enhanced the power of the cosmic force emerging from his eyes over and over again, and it did not take long for the golden energy to extend to the rest of his body. Under his control, that cosmic force revolved around him, generating a cocoon. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the powerhouses of the sacred races were struck with awe as the majestic cosmic force formed a cocoon, enveloping every inch of Cain's body. This was just the beginning, as tendrils emerged from the cocoon, seemingly fusing into the fabric of space and beginning to crystallize. After connecting the cosmic force cocoon into the enhanced law of space that flooded infinite horizon, the Red King closed his eyes, and his psychic embodiment appeared once more in the soul sea, this time in front of the hollow sun seed. The mind-severing ritual completely erased the memories and will inside the sun seed and dissipated all the ego wave that emerged from it. The massive red force field that Cain could extend for hundreds of kilometers was gone, the Depravita's spell destroying all its power and energy. All the lucky chances Cain had encountered, allowing his ego wave to reach a level comparable to those at the mind over matter stage, did not matter anymore. The Red King's eyes grew sharp and solemn as he analyzed the sun seed.
The flow's cocoon will connect with the memories of the world, allowing the boy to reforge his memories and experiences, allowing his ego to be reborn. However, I still need to reignite and restore his alter ego. If I do not do it, restoring it to its peak condition would take him years.
There were many ways in which the Red King could restore the alter ego, but most of them would take too long. A sharp light appeared in the psychic embodiment's eyes as he came up with the best way, one that would not only restore the sun seed to its peak, but allow it to grow even stronger. However, it came with a high price. A flash of resolution appeared in the eyes of the Red King as his psychic embodiment was set ablaze, all its power burning like a majestic flame. He was burning the will and mental force that forged his existence, and once it was gone, this manifestation of the Red King would cease to exist. Despite all that, not even a sliver of hesitation appeared in the Red King's eyes as he flashed forward, transforming into red flames that drove into the sun seed, reaching the deepest part of the alter ego. Silence reigned as the Red King's flaming existence faded inside the alter ego. Still, it did not last long, since the next second, the entire soul sea began to tremble as the sun seed, drained of its energy and light, began to glow like a supernova ready to explode. The collapsing lightning emperor, Lord Kabuto, Zero Mint, Anga, Ishmael, and all the top-tier figures of the sacred races were gazing at the golden, crystallized cocoon in the sky, wondering what was happening inside. Suddenly, their eyes widened, and smiles of thrill emerged on their faces as they saw a red force field emerge from the crystallized cocoon. It was small and weak, yet it was growing more potent, and most importantly, it was the willpower of the Scarlet King. The entity that had been occupying Kane's body was beyond powerful, capable of feats that defied logic. However, he was also apathetic and devoid of emotions. In contrast, the Scarlet King, while not matching the power of that entity, was a beacon of hope. He was someone who could elevate those around him to greater heights, instilling a sense of purpose and conviction. The warriors, their hearts pounding with anticipation, felt a surge of purpose and conviction as they sensed the power of the Scarlet King's will. It filled them with a profound sense of hope, a belief that everything would be all right. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 941, Cleansing Atlas. The collapsing lightning emperor's eyes were ablaze with a mix of awe and wonder as he beheld the red force field. His gaze mirrored the same intensity, and his aura erupted in a dazzling display of power. Everybody turned to the collapsing lightning emperor, both members of the light and dark camps. Curiosity arose in the eyes of the powerhouses of the Deus Behemoth Empire and Anima Machinarium Empire. The Dark Emperor, Ishmael, and Goliath were not only confused at the sudden surge in power of the collapsing lightning emperor. A palpable sense of wariness began to creep into their expressions, hinting at the potential threat they perceived. While the Scarlet King's Ouroboros system was an absolutely impartial and flawless meritocracy, allowing both the light and dark camps to rise at almost equal speed, the overall power of those who held the title of Titan was much higher. That was because Kane had personally helped the collapsing Lightning Emperor, Anga, and the patriarchs of the Solis family and Zanguini's family grow stronger, fixing their cultivation and granting them world treasures. The powerhouses of the Dark Camp were all aware of that, but none of them had worried as they were under the protection of the Scarlet King, and anyone who dared to display any sort of infighting would be crushed. However, the Scarlet King was in a coma, and it was the perfect time for those who could not see beyond race to make a move. The collapsing Lightning Emperor ascended into the sky, positioning himself directly in front of the golden crystallized sphere emitting the red force field. His gaze swept over the warriors of both the light and dark camps, and a chilling sense of absolute brutality filled his eyes as he clenched his fists and bellowed.
Death.
There were just two simple words, yet they carried an intent so pure and clear that they flooded the warriors' minds and souls, immediately dispersing the doubts of the light camp and the worries of the dark camp.
Death.
Anga shouted, his entire body and aura glowing with murderous intent.
Death.
Ishmael, the Atrox Immatus Emperor, burst with lightning as his eyes glowed with killing intent.
Death.
Lord Kabuto's entire body glowed with the sun's might, and his soul was full of murderous wrath.
Death. 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 Death.
It didn't take long for all the warriors of the light and dark camps to begin chanting, their killing and murderous wrath flooding the terrain and freezing the air. They were all tired, having burned their life force in the last fight, but the exhaustion faded as it was replaced by the desire to kill and burn everything that Dark Sky had done to their world. The collapsing Lightning Emperor's willpower seemed to blend with the red force field coming from the crystallized cocoon as if he were the Scarlet King's embodiment. His eyes then turned to Prime Minister Minxit and Prime Minister Rasputin. The logistics masters and leaders of the light and dark camps understood the intent behind those eyes and immediately nodded, signaling they were ready to face their responsibilities.
March.
With everything ready, the collapsing Lightning Emperor shouted, making the drive and willpower in all the warriors burst as they marched back into the dark fog. The combined aura of all those warriors resembled a storm capable of engulfing an entire continent. The moment they stepped into the dark fog, they were like a cleansing fire, massacring every single life form of the dark sky that they could find in their path. It took them less than an hour to thoroughly cleanse an entire sector inside the dark fog, and what came next was the anti-dark fog towers. While the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the others were eager to butcher the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky, they did not know where their headquarters were located. And even if they were to gain access to it, the aliens inside would be much more powerful. Instead of performing an assault on a location they knew nothing about, they decided to clean the Atlas continent from the dark fog and besiege Dark Sky's headquarters, taking advantage of the fact that the grand humanoids and humanoids would not come out and fight due to their wounds. That way, the moment the Scarlet King woke up, they would be ready for the final assault. The Ouroboros system kept working. Even though the Scarlet King was in a coma, the system that tracked their points was still in place. The one in charge of that was the Absolute Life Form system, and even if Kane was in a coma, it was still connected to the AI chips and computer rings, tracking everybody's moves. Although the Ouroboros ranking reward was not possible due to the absence of the Scarlet King, who was in possession of all those evil treasures, they were still sending the drones from the insect army into the Samsara flame. The collapsing Lightning Emperor took control of the operations, refilling the supply of treasures for the Ouroboros system, but that was not all. Although tempting, he did not keep the merit for himself and helped the other high-ranking masters of the light and dark camps enhance their rebirth marks. Since even average Divine Ascension masters could not enter the dark fog due to the absence of the humanoids, the number of drones being butchered every week was counted in the billions. They were killing so fast that by the third week, the unthinkable happened. From the start of the war against Dark Sky, the density of the waves of drones of the insect army never diminished, making it seem that no matter how many they killed, their numbers were infinite. Yet now, that finally changed. Even if the drones from the insect army were just cannon fodder, seeing them weaken filled the warriors with thrill as they felt they were advancing, their goal of weakening Dark Sky moving in the right direction. While all that happened, the crystallized cocoon in the sky began to pulse with increasing power, and the red force field emerging from it covered all of Infinite Horizon's sky and extended even further. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 942, Canis Awakens. All the warriors who crossed through Infinite Horizon gazed at the crystalline cocoon in the sky with awe and respect. The red force field emerging from it was like the sun's radiance, warming their bodies and pushing them back into the battlefield with even greater power. Inside the cocoon made of the cosmic energy of the flow was Kane, his eyes closed and his willpower on full display. The red force field grew stronger each day, and finally, on the 26th day, Kane opened his eyes.
Crack.
It was as if the entire sky was cracking, but the thunderous sound came from no other place than the golden cocoon, which filled with cracks before shattering into billions of small fragments that fused with the fabric of space. All the people currently in Infinite Horizon immediately turned to the sky and watched in awe and shock as the figure of a young man stood there. at the center of that majestic red force field, like a primordial god. None dared to utter a single word, simply watching the young man, their hearts filled with reverence and curiosity. Cain's eyes were full of confusion as he stood in the sky, gazing around him, not understanding what was happening. His last memories were of a clash with Horus and the grand humanoids of Dark Sky, but after that, everything went dark. What happened? The young man frowned, unable to answer, and his frown only deepened as he noticed a nebulous energy coming from the stars beyond the crystal wall and felt the changes in his body, soul, and willpower. Celestial force. How? He could recognize the nebulous energy flowing into his body from the description of the primordial path's ascension stage. Still, it did not make sense as he did not recall breaking into that level.
System, scan me.
Cain's mind desperately sought a sense of order amid the confusion and chaos that were his memories, so he turned to the one constant. Luckily for him, the robotic voice of the absolute life form system echoed in his mind, and all the information appeared. Scanning vessel. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind primordial. Path of power, astral rebirth mind calamity, essence evolution time tribulation. Lineage, sun master lineage. Wave talent, pseudo-foth autoneer demon. Stats. Strength, 2.24, 6.8. Agility, 0.8, 1.5, 2.5. Vitality, 2.9, 5.4, 8.3. Astral wave, 2.2, 3.6. Essence wave, 2.3, 2.5, 4.1. Soul force, 1.5, 1.9. Ego wave, 1.1, 3.5. Astral blood saturation, 100% completion. Law mastery. Law of space, extreme law integration. Law of time, middle law integration. Earth law, extreme law integration. Water law, extreme law integration. Fire law, extreme law integration. Wind law, extreme law integration. Note, wave virus inside the vessel enhanced wave talent by 2.2%. Note, natural energy and celestial force have enhanced every aspect of the vessel's physical body, including the astral wave and essence wave. The current value is marked between. Cain's eyes widened, pure shock arising in them as he saw his stats and energy. Each of his physical stats had risen immensely, nearly doubled, and the enhancement by the natural energy and cosmic force improved them by over 75%. The sudden surge of power was almost too much to comprehend, leaving him in a state of disbelief and awe. Even the absolute life form system's racial classification had changed, mocking him as a hybrid between human and primordial. He was already halfway into becoming one of those cosmic entities. If that was not shocking enough, Cain saw how his ego wave had nearly tripled in power, with the energy held inside now mightier than any mind over matter powerhouses, and he was still at the second realm of the ego eternal path of power. What is happening? Seeing those stats brought even more chaos to Cain's mind, filling him with questions he could not answer. However, his willpower soon came into effect, forcing his emotions under control before a sharp light appeared in his eyes as he focused once more on the absolute life form system. Cain had been monitoring the AI chips and computer rings to track everyone's movements. He clearly remembered that the collapsing Lightning Emperor and the others were in their proximity when he clashed with Horus and the grand humanoids of Dark Sky, so their devices must have recorded what happened later. It did not take long for the absolute life form system to display images in his mind. He saw how Horus and his grand humanoids of Dark Sky were able to break his mind and memories, and how the warriors of the sacred races marched onto the battlefield to protect him. The collapsing Lightning Emperor and the others fought bravely, with nearly suicidal determination, but were overcome by the aliens. Just as one of the humanoids of Dark Sky was about to sever his head from the rest of his body, it happened. Cain saw how his body moved, but he was not the one in control. With a single move, the entity that took over his body killed the humanoids of Dark Sky. The video showed how the entity displaying godlike powers used arcane arts that seemed related to the power of Oda to dominate the battlefield completely. Those powers were like nothing Cain had seen before, but they seemed to carry a significant cost since the entity suffered a severe backlash just as he was ready to use them to kill Horus and the others. After that, a fierce clash continued, and the entity rose to the sky before shouting 5 words with power and will that seemed to defy the universe.
The stars are my birthright.
Next came the massacre of the grand humanoids and humanoids of dark sky as the entity began to kill, relying no longer on that mystic arcane art, but on Kane's body, energy, and laws. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 943, Time to End This War. Kane was left in a state of shock and speechlessness, his eyes fixed on the unfolding events. The climax came when the entity, in hot pursuit of Horus and the aliens, vanished into the depths of the Atlas continent, only to reappear moments later, bearing news of dark sky's weakened state. It then cocooned itself in a shimmering golden shell, leaving the warriors in a state of uncertainty. Although the entity never revealed his name or identity, it was easy for Kane to recognize him. That sense of apathy and overbearing attitude born of a deep-rooted belief in absolute superiority was not new to him. He had seen it during the awakening of his alter ego, and believed it to be his former self, the one before the reincarnation that brought him to Ether. The news of the cocoon shattering immediately spread among the warriors of the sacred races. It did not take long for the collapsing Lightning Emperor and all the powerhouses ravaging the dark fog to return to the infinite horizon. At first, they were filled with thrill and delight upon seeing their leader return, but it was evident that something was wrong with Kane as he stood silently in the sky. Although they were worried, all the warriors remained silent and watched from a distance, not wanting to disturb him. Kane did not even register the presence of the powerhouses. The shock and confusion in his eyes was intense, and his ego wave was trembling, a manifestation of the turmoil coursing through his soul and mind. Even with his monstrous willpower and the ability to control his emotions and maintain focus, he was at a loss, silent in the sky. His identity as a reincarnator was not something he had considered or even thought about for several years, yet this changed everything. After all, his previous incarnation had manifested during his current lifetime and took control over his body and soul. It was a heavy psychological blow to the young man. Kane could not help but wonder about that entity's goal and who his body's true ruler was. The weight of the revelation pressed down on him, causing his mind to swirl with questions and doubts. He felt a profound disconnect from his own identity, a sense of being an intruder in his own life. The presence of this overpowering, ancient self now overshadowed the certainty he once had about his purpose and path. Kane's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles turning white as he struggled to process the implications. The entity's actions, cold detachment, and overwhelming power he wielded felt like a dark cloud overshadowing his existence. Who am I? What am I? A myriad of questions arose in Kane's mind, but those were the most important ones. The fear that his current self was merely a vessel for this ancient being gnawed at him, affecting him to the core, making him question every action and move he had made since he opened his eyes in this world. More and more warriors began to amass on the ground of Infinite Horizon, all filled with hope and thrill to see their leader, but surprised by his state. They could sense the intense inner battle by the state of his willpower and the shocking tremors of the red force field, though they could not fully grasp its magnitude. Kane's thoughts spiraled further as he tried to reconcile his current identity with the undeniable presence of his former self. The realization that this divine entity had taken control in moments of crisis shocked him, and it grew even worse as he considered that it might have influenced his actions and decisions, generating a profound sense of vulnerability and uncertainty. Who was he really? Was he merely a fragment of a greater whole, destined to be overshadowed by a more powerful past self? Was he truly the master of his life, or had his actions been influenced by someone else without him even realizing it? His mind raced, seeking answers in the chaos. He needed to understand this entity's intentions and uncover the truth about his goals and how they aligned with his own desires. Unfortunately, Kane did not even know where to start to look for signs of this entity or in which silent part of his soul he hid. The shock and confusion began to give way to a resolve forged in the crucible of his inner turmoil, and he communicated with the one he knew had answers.
Apex.
Kane's voice carried powerful intent, a will that began to rise higher and higher, fighting against the existential doubt that attempted to erode his ego and spirit. The golden humanoid in the deepest pot of Cain's soul, C, gazed toward the sunseed, and he could feel the furious will within. A sad expression appeared as he also felt the distrust, making it clear how little faith Cain had in him.
Ah, he will not appear again, not to take your body nor to help you.
Apex's voice sounded tired, and he turned to the massive gate behind him, his eyes focused on the cracks.
At least for 10,000 years, you will not have to worry about his influence.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard those words. Apex did not try to hide anything or play tricks, but that did not mean he would trust him, as it was not the first time he had been deceived. He stood silent, closing his eyes as he began to assimilate everything that had happened these past few days.
I will not be a mere puppet to his past.
A sense of awe and conviction began to arise through Cain's willpower, and as he opened his eyes, all doubts faded. Although he could not yet understand the nature and control of the entity, that did not mean the future would remain the same. The massive red force field extending beyond infinite horizon flowed back into his mind, and his eyes burned like 3 red suns as he turned toward the north of the Atlas continent, a sense of brutality and bloodlust emerging.
Time to end this war.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 944, Burn Their City to the Ground. Cain's eyes were sharp and focused as he stared at the collapsing Lightning Emperor, first collapsing Lightning Pillar, Anga, and all the other top-tier warriors from the sacred race. A smile appeared on his face as he felt their power and how all had developed their pseudo-immortal bodies.
A little more.
Cain was delighted with the improvement the top-tier warriors of the sacred races had gained during this short month, but there was always room for improvement. He raised his hand and drew the natural energy and cosmic force into his palm before setting it ablaze. The warriors of the sacred races could not help but focus their eyes on that flaming energy in the palm of the Scarlet King, only to see how a flame with 24 colors emerged the next second. Awe and desire appeared in the eyes of all those who saw those flames as they understood it was a 24 revolution flame, capable of triggering a 24 revolution refinement, improving their foundation and talent to an incommensurable level. Cain's eyes were sharp as he glanced at the 24 revolution flame. Now that his body and spirit had been enhanced by the primordial path's ascension stage, and his ego wave had grown 3 times more powerful, summoning this sort of flame was not a challenge at all. Besides the collapsing Lightning Emperor, there was no knowledge of anyone receiving such a powerful tribulation enhancement, so everybody wondered who would be lucky. The most likely candidates were Anga Egon or the patriarch of the Solis clan due to their close relationship with the Scarlet King. However, the flames with 24 colors left the hand of the Scarlet King and appeared above none other than the top-tier master of the Inferno demon race and strongest warrior of the Dark Camp, Zero Mint. Smiles full of thrill and excitement immediately appeared on those of the Dark Camp, as they were happy to see that the Scarlet King would choose Zero Mint, enhancing their status and proving the goodwill of the young man toward them. As for those of the Light Camp, none of them showed the slightest sign of dissatisfaction. After all, Zero Mint matched that of the collapsing Lightning Emperor, so it made sense he would be chosen. Of course, other than the collapsing Lightning Emperor and Anga, no one knew that Zero Mint was actually the first collapsing Lightning Pillar. Cain did not say a word as his ego wave cocooned Zero Mint, and the 24 revolution flame flooded his body inside and out, allowing it to trigger the tribulation enhancement. Soon, waves upon waves of world energy began to flood the man. The warriors of the sacred races all turned to the red cocoon, their eyes full of awe and wonder as they saw the ocean of world energy flooding into Zero Mint's body. Soon, their focus turned back to the Scarlet King as they saw the young man generate a second 24 revolution refinement flame in the midst of performing the tribulation enhancement. Cain's eyes burned with red light, making them seem like 3 red suns. He covered Anga with his ego wave and sent the flame toward the man, triggering a second tribulation enhancement. That was not even the end, as he created a third 24 revolution flame that he used with the patriarch of the Solis clan. An ego wave of over 3 points allowed Kane's cognitive abilities to reach an unprecedented level, and he could carry out 324 revolution refinements simultaneously. Of course, this was also possible due to the trio's massive willpower, which prevented world energy stagnation and explosion. It took Kane nearly 6 hours to finish with the trio, and once he was done, he turned his focus toward Ishmael, Ian, and the Dark Emperor, generating a new set of 24 revolution flames. He carried on like that until all the warriors that deployed a battle power above the True Titan and True God tier obtained the Tribulation Enhancement. They would be the head of the spear and face the greatest danger in the final battle, so they deserved to obtain the highest enhancement. Kane felt exhausted after finishing all those Tribulation Enhancements, but the torrent of natural energy and cosmic force flooding his body and spirit began to wash away the exhaustion. It did not take long for Kane to return to his peak, and his energy exploded as he pointed his spear toward the Atlas continent and shouted with a voice that reverberated through the sky.
Let's butcher them all and burn their city to the ground.
Kane's eyes burned with brutality and bloodlust as the Lucifer Morningstar battle set emerged, covering his entire body and boosting his strength and defense to an even higher level. A pillar of fallen aura emerged from his body with such force that it made the entire infinite horizon tremble, rising so high that it clashed with the crystal wall, generating cracks in it. The eyes of the warriors of the sacred races began to glow with awe and thrill as they saw that torrent of energy emerging from the Scarlet King. Smiles full of bloodlust and ferocity appeared on their faces. They chose the Scarlet King as their leader because of the sense of purpose that the young man instilled in their hearts, but they also needed his strength in a time of war like this. After a crippling injury, many warriors would have their strength diminished even if they managed to recover, but that was clearly not the case with the Scarlet King, as his power was exponentially stronger than the last time he led them into battle during the Anti-Dark Fog Tower missions.
Boom. 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 Boom.
Explosions of energy began to arise across Infinite Horizon as the most powerful warriors of the sacred races mimicked the Scarlet King's state. Each unleashed a power that surpassed the peak divine ascension realm before marching with the young man into Atlas. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 945, Marching into the Lovecraft City. There was a nightmarish gargantuan dimension, a terrifying abyss hidden deep within the Atlas continent that cradled a massive underwater city. This place was none other than Lovecraft City, a construct of unfathomable horror and grandeur, far surpassing the one Kane had vanquished and destroyed in Chronos. The size of this dimension was gargantuan, nearly a tenth of Atlas landmass, with billions of insect drones flooding the waters along with all sorts of twisted and nightmarish aquatic monsters. At the heart of Lovecraft City stood a dark temple. From this temple, waves of dark radiation spread in all directions, flooding the dimension with the energy it needed to exist and grow. Surrounding the temple were 11 monstrous figures, each embodying a different concept that permeated every inch of their flesh, blood, and soul. 4 extremely powerful entities were in the deepest chamber of a massive temple resembling a twisted demonic cathedral. These monsters, with bodies and souls made of negative emotions and chaotic psychic energy, would usually hide their appearance, embracing a sense of mystery and power. But there was no room for such fanciness and parlor, as they used every second they had to heal their bodies and souls. The 4 entities in the chamber were none other than the grand humanoids of Dark Sky, the only ones still alive after the onslaught and massacre perpetrated by the Red King. It was extremely easy for Depravitas to heal from their injuries, as they only needed energy to regenerate their flesh and blood, and Lovecraft City was overflowing with it. However, things were more complicated this time. The humanoid bodies they used outside Lovecraft City were known as sky shields and were indispensable in a world invasion. The will of Ether would attack any alien life form that dared to invade it, but it could not attack what it could not see. The dark fog provided a layer of protection, obscuring their auras, but that was still not enough. So, the Depravitas adopted their spiritual form and fused it into the sky shields, essentially turning their souls and energy into fleshy bodies. That made it impossible for the world will to detect them inside the dark fog. Unfortunately for the Depravitas, that amazing disguise had one big drawback. They could not use any form of energy or spiritual power inside the sky shields, severely limiting their powers. If that was not bad enough, the physical damage done to the humanoid metallic bodies was translated into soul damage. When the Red King severed their arms and legs, he was severing pieces of their souls. Without the endless supply of Depravita essence flooding Lovecraft City, it would have taken hundreds of years for the Depravitas to heal instead of just a few weeks. The strongest of the group, and the one who managed to heal the fastest, was a massive Depravita exuding an intense power and dread. His massive, muscular red body was adorned with intricate, ancient armor decorated with spikes and skulls that seemed fused into his flesh and muscles. The Depravita's golden eyes glowed fiercely, radiating malevolence and pure, absolute, overwhelming wrath and rage, the core of his soul and existence. Dark energy swirled around his figure as he gazed at the other monsters in the hall, his wrath growing more potent as he saw the pitiful condition in which a single man had left them. Of course, this massive Depravita that seemed to embody the concept of rage was none other than Horus, the leader of the world domination force sent by the Depravita race's High Lord Zeno.
Only 15 of us are left.
Horus clenched his fists with such strength that his massive claws pierced his skin, making him bleed. But the rage was so intense that he barely noticed the pain. Not just their low number infuriated the Depravita wrath. He had surveyed the terrain over Atlas and saw how the sacred race's forces had built anti-dark fog towers in every corner. The only place not under the radiance of those towers was the massive hole that led to Lovecraft City. In essence, they were trapped, besieged on all sides, and trying to turn the tables seemed like an impossible, fruitless mission. If they were to march out of Lovecraft City, their movements would be extremely limited as they could not move outside the dark fog, and the combined power of the top-tier warriors of the sacred races might cause the death of many. Horus could not help but turn to the ancient key, previously known as the Void King. He understood reinforcements were needed if he wanted any chance to control Ether, but he knew very well the consequences of doing that. The price that High Lord Zeno paid to send the 41 Depravitas, along with his original body into Ether, was incredibly high, even for a third realm life form, and that should have been more than enough to dominate a seed world in less than a year. If Horus were to communicate with High Lord Zeno to inform the third realm Depravita that not only had he failed to control Ether, but that he needed help as the natives had pushed them into a corner, his life would be over. Just like Horus did not care about the rest of the Depravitas in Ether, seeing them only as tools, High Lord Zeno also saw Horus as a mere pawn in his games. Horus could feel his mind burning as he used every ounce of his strength and intellect to try and find a way out of this seemingly impossible predicament. No matter how dire the situation was, he refused to accept defeat. They would be overwhelmed if they marched out of Lovecraft City in sky shields with their current number, so he needed to find another way. Suddenly, Horus' eyes widened as he looked into the distance, focusing his perception on the dimensional barrier that covered Lovecraft City. He felt hundreds of figures marching inside. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 946, The Final Battle, Flames Through Atlas Sky. While Horus was the first to detect them, it did not take long for the rest of the Depravitas in the hall and around the temple to feel the aura of the hundreds of warriors of the sacred races entering Lovecraft City. Horus's shock was mirrored in their eyes as they could not believe what they were witnessing. It was not the fact that the warriors of the sacred races could enter that shocked them. After all, while the dimensional sphere that contained Lovecraft City was essentially impervious to outside attacks, it was connected to the main plane of reality, so entering it was simple for someone with a high mastery of the law of space, such as the Scarlet King. What truly astounded them was that the Scarlet King and sacred races would dare to invade Lovecraft City. This was the domain of the Depravita race in Ether, a fortress full of billions of drones at their disposal, and flooded with Depravita essence, a resource they could use to constantly regenerate. The sacred races had the home advantage outside, practically besieging the entire dimension and restricting the movement of the Depravitas. Yet they gave up all that and marched into a battlefield they were doomed to lose. No matter how you looked at it, it did not make sense. Horus knew all too well that the Scarlet King was not to be underestimated. If anything, he was one of the most cunning adversaries he had ever encountered. So, it was a chilling thought that he might enter the headquarters, where the Depravita race would have the absolute advantage since it meant there was something he was not seeing. Wait, could he? A sense of panic began to rise in Horus's eyes as he remembered the destruction of Lovecraft City in Kronos. He had seen how the Scarlet King summoned the time tribulation to shatter the dimensional barrier, but was not worried about such an event happening to his Lovecraft City. After all, Atlas Lovecraft City had undergone countless evolutions over the years, and the power of law tribulations could do nothing to it, even if hundreds of warriors would trigger it simultaneously. The tribulation's power would simply spread across the entire dimension barrier and lack the strength to do real damage. However, Horus knew there was one type of tribulation that might be powerful enough to break the dimension barrier, and if someone could do that, it would be the Scarlet King.
You dare?
Horus roared in hatred and anger as he marched out of the dark temple like a bloodthirsty meteorite, and the rest of the Depravitas soon followed him. It did not take long for the 15 Depravitas to gaze at the hundreds of sacred races warriors with their own eyes. At the head of them was a young man, his entire body radiating power and vitality. Cain saw Horus and the rest of the Depravitas marching toward him, and a cold smile appeared on his face as his 3 eyes began to glow with a red glow, each emanating a radiance that shed a crimson light across the entire dimension.
Nuo.
Horus's voice, filled with a mix of fear and desperation, echoed through the air as he saw those red eyes burning with willpower, ready to explode. He knew perfectly well what they would trigger, and the realization only deepened his fear. Unfortunately, no matter how much he wanted to stop it, he could not. A thunderous explosion echoed across Lovecraft City, so powerful that it made the ears of all inside ring. Its origin came from the sky above the dimensional sphere, where a gargantuan, swirling, tempestuous storm of fire, with flames that shifted through a spectrum of colors, each hue representing a different facet of psychic energy, spread for 9 kilometers. However, that was just the first layer. The next second, a second layer of multicolored flames 81 kilometers wide emerged, followed by a third layer 729 kilometers wide. Horus's march froze as he heard that explosion. He gazed at the ceiling of the dimension, his vision piercing through the dimensional barrier and focusing on the sky with a sense of shock and disbelief.
Impossible. How can the third layer be so massive?
The more powerful your willpower, the more potent the ego destruction tribulation would become. For those with a soul force at the divine ascension realm, it could trigger a 9-heaven ego destruction tribulation. However, that tribulation would generate 9 layers, with the first being 9 kilometers, the second 18 kilometers, the third 27 kilometers, and so on until a final 81-kilometer layer appeared. Horus had never heard of an ego destruction tribulation like the one unfolding above Atlas right now. Instead of doubling in size, it was growing exponentially, and he could not help but freeze in sheer terror as he saw how the 4th layer was 6,561 kilometers wide. The Depravita feared that the Scarlet King would trigger a 9-heaven ego destruction tribulation, but what was happening was so much worse. Finally, the 9th and last layer appeared, extending for 387,420,489 kilometers. The multicolored storm of fire, composed of 9 layers of pure psychic energy, was so majestic and immense that it practically covered the entire sky of the Atlas continent. All the Depravitas gazed at the sky of the Atlas continent, not only Horus, and the terror and dread in their souls were unimaginable. They were entities born of emotions and psychic energy, so a tribulation meant to destroy those aspects of existence was terrifying beyond belief. The warriors of the sacred races also detected that tribulation, but unlike the Depravitas, their eyes were full of awe and wonder. As they turned to the young man in front of them, smiles full of thrill appeared on their faces. Determination and devotion rose in their hearts as they knew he would lead them to victory. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 947, The Final Battle, Stars of Doomsday. Cain's eyes glowed with more and more power, as if responding to the storm in the sky. To tell the truth, he was just as surprised as Horus to see that the type of ego-destruction tribulation he would trigger would be of such magnitude to cover the entire continent, and whose power seemed to evoke the highest level of ether. He had been suppressing the 9 ego-destruction tribulation for over a year now, and he knew that it would rise to the next level after the enhancement to his ego wave, but this was simply too much, making him think something else was involved. Of course, Cain did not show any of that on his face, as there was no room for doubt at a moment like this. His eyes were full of resolution and confidence, increasing the fear in the Depravitas while filling the souls of his warriors with courage and determination. The more powerful, the better. Cain's killing intent exploded, throwing everything else to the back of his mind as he raised his right palm before clenching his fist. As if responding to Cain's fists, the massive storm of fire that covered the sky of Atlas exploded with power again, the force of all 9 layers fusing into a flaming tornado that dived down from the sky, coursing through the massive hole in the ground and crashing into the dimension sphere.
Rumbled. Crack.
The entire Lovecraft city began to tremble, and cracks began to form as waves of fire covered every inch of the dimensional barrier, trying to get in and kill everything inside.
THUUMMMM.
Immediately, the power of the tribulation affected the interior of the dimension as a psychic wave managed to pierce through the cracks. It did nothing to the warriors of the sacred races, but it made the minds of the Depravitas tremble. Although painful, the psychic wave was far from enough to harm the Depravitas. Still, they were not the only aliens inside the dimension, and the next second, billions of drones from the insect army that flooded the underwater city perished. All the drones beneath the Divine Ascension realm died in a second due to the psychic wave. Their hearts and internal organs, and even life force, were intact, but their minds and spirits were destroyed. Panic and horror appeared in Horus's eyes as he saw the death of thousands of drones, drastically reducing their battle power. However, he did not have time to worry about that as the cracks began to expand at a shocking speed in the dimensional barrier, and it was only a matter of minutes before it shattered. Just as the terror in his heart was about to break him, Horus's rage exploded, allowing his mind to regain focus as he roared with all his power.
We are the world domination force. We are the ones that dominate these ants. We are the ones barging into their homes, not the other way around.
Horus's words seemed to awaken the rest of the Depravitas from their stupor, injecting them with the same hatred and rage that overflowed from the soul of the Red Depravita. A fierce and bloodthirsty smile appeared on Horus's face, and a bloody sword appeared in his hand, which he pointed toward the Scarlet King.
Killing that insect will stop the tribulation. After that, these ants will be nothing more than fishes in a bucket, ready for us to catch and devour.
The rage in the hearts of the Depravitas grew even stronger as Horus's words gave them a purpose and path to victory. If they killed Cain, the fiery storm that engulfed the dimensional barrier would fade, and then they would have no problem killing the rest of the warriors of the sacred races. Immediately, their bodies began to burn as they consumed their vitality to increase their power and enhance the strength of their concepts. Cain could feel the bloodlust in the Depravitas, along with their burning determination, all directed at him, But the only thing that arose in him was a cold smile as the fallen Archangel Battle Set emerged. His hand tightened around the Spear of Doom as fallen aura burst through his body.
This is the last fight. We will dominate Ether's soul and rise to the stars as the masters of our destinies.
Cain's voice echoed across the dimension as he pointed his spear at Horus.
Stars of Doomsday, burn your life and souls.
The eyes of the 6 emperors of the sacred races, along with Anga, Zero Mint, General Cassidius, Diamond Saint Duke, Bloodless One, Laud Kabuto, and Laud Zanguines, all glowed with a red light as they ignited their life force and souls, allowing their power to rise to an incredible level. Cain smiled radiantly toward Horus as he demonstrated that his most powerful warriors were willing to burn their souls in his name, something the Depravitas did not dare to embark on, even as death loomed over them. Neither the Scarlet King nor Horus had made a move, yet the first battle had already happened. It displayed the determination and willpower of their armies, and it was clear that the winner was the Master of Ether.
Kill all of them.
Horus shouted, his rage already overcoming his reason, guiding the Depravitas and thousands of drones into the final battle. His aura burst as the concept of rage granted him immense power.
Let them burn.
Cain's voice was cold. His mind showed a state of pure focus as he marched forward, followed by hundreds of the strongest masters of Ether. All of them showed fanatic determination, ready to fight to the death. The warriors of Ether and the entities of the Depravita race marched toward each other, both sides with a single and absolute goal: to kill and burn everything that their enemy represented and embodied. There was no room for mercy, doubt, or hesitation, as only one side would remain when this battle was over. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 948, The Final Battle, All-Out Showdown. All the warriors from the sacred races and the aliens from the Depravita race marched forward with maniacal bloodlust and killing intent. The leaders of both sides unleashed the greatest power and being the first to clash. Cain's life force burned as the Spear of Doom clashed with Horus' sword, unleashing a massive explosion of fallen aura and Depravita aura in all directions. The Scarlet King's eyes widened at the immense power behind the Depravita of Rage's sword. His own physical might was enough to shatter meteors, yet Horus not only matched him, but in some moments seemed to surpass his strength. However, Cain was not the only one taken aback. Horus was equally astonished by the young man's strength, able to clash directly with him. As a Depravita of Rage, Horus' physical might increased the angrier he became, and right now, his rage practically consumed his soul, pushing him to the pinnacle of his power. While Cain's battle style and power could not compare with that of the entity that had massacred them, he was impressively close, further fueling Horus's hatred. The more powerful and exceptional Cain revealed himself to be, the more intense Horus's rage burned. The clash between spear and sword ended in a stalemate, the immense power in their weapons forcing both combatants back hundreds of meters. But within a fraction of a second, the Scarlet King and Horus's energies exploded again, their auras flaring with renewed ferocity as they prepared for the next strike.
Inferno of wraths.
Horus channeled his rage into a fiery aura that engulfed his body and sword, and he raised his sword to hack down with near-cataclysmic power.
Wrath of the 9 hells.
Cain did not falter or move back as he saw that sword. His spear glowed with the might of 9 fires that burned with the intensity of the sun's surface as he struck forward with the Spear of Doom. An explosion that could have set ablaze the surface of Atlas triggered the moment the spear and sword clashed. The Scarlet King and the Depravita of Rage unleashed their most potent attacks, creating a dark red tornado of energy around them. Just the shockwaves of the blast managed to send warriors of the sacred races and aliens of the Depravita race flying away. Explosion after explosion echoed inside the dark red tornado of energy as the Scarlet King's spear and the Deprivator of Rage's sword clashed repeatedly. Not even the 13 Stars of Doom or the Deprivators dared cross into the dark red tornado, as the shock waves and energy blasts unleashed by the Scarlet King and Horus were too monstrous. Although they could resist it if they gave it their all, the warriors and aliens knew the only thing they would add to their leader would be a burden, making it easier for the other side to attack from behind. Instead, the 13 Stars of Doom turned their eyes to the 14 Deprivators. Although the warriors of the sacred races had fought the Deprivators before during the Anti-Dark Tower mission and defeated them, that was when the Sky Shield limited their power. Now, the Deprivators were displaying their true bodies and could use their concepts, raising their power to the next level and granting access to all sorts of terrifying and majestic abilities. If the 13 Stars of Doom of the sacred races were to clash with the Deprivators head-on, they would be defeated even as they burned their life force and souls. Luckily, they were not alone, and each was accompanied by 20 true titans and true gods armed to the teeth with sacred treasures. The collapsing Lightning Emperor, Zero Mint, and Anga Egon stood together, the trio facing the Deprivators with the most powerful auras. Such auras had manifested outside Lovecraft City as grand humanoids of dark sky. The three grand Deprivators exuded a power that seemed to suffocate everything around them, and their concepts were so clear that just watching them revealed it. One of them resembled a pestilent corpse, full of rotten skin and blood, everything around him decomposing, even the fabric of space. The other resembled a mutated and oversized demonic pig, his belly so massive that it occupied over half of his body, a perpetual sense of hunger emanating from every cell. The last one's aura was the strongest of all. His massive, towering dark figure resembled an archaic demon. His face was ancient, and his eyes glowed with lightning arcs that gave the feeling that everything should succumb to them, an arrogance of immense power. Anga had performed his true bone calamity when Cain was in a coma, and now all three had performed two of their true calamities. Still, the trio felt their instincts screaming in danger and knew they might die in this fight. However, their eyes burned with red light as they were ready to make the ultimate sacrifice if that was what it took to kill the monsters. Zero Mint focused on the Deprivator of Pride, Anga on the Deprivator of Pestilence, and the collapsing Lightning Emperor on the Deprivator of Gluttony. Neither side showed the slightest hesitation as they marched forward, full of killing intent. Zero Mint's sword clashed with the lightning force field emanating from the Deprivator of Pride. Anga and the Deprivator of Pestilence moved like streams of lethal darkness and poisonous mist, and the collapsing lightning, Emperor's gravitational punch, clashed with the devouring palm of the Deprivator of Gluttony. The Deprivators almost immediately overpowered the three warriors of the sacred race. At that point, the 60 true titans and true gods came into play, attacking from the sidelines and bombarding the aliens with a barrage of attacks. It was not just their fight that started as the other 9 Stars of Doom clashed with the rest of the Deprivators, each accompanied by a squad of true titans and true gods. As for the other hundreds of late and peak Divine Ascension Masters, they battled like madmen against the tens of thousands of drones of the insect army, constructing a formation around the battlefield to ensure those things would not affect the Stars of Doom. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 949, The Final Battle/Decisive Move. In less than 30 seconds, the entire Lovecraft City, which matched nearly 1/10 of the Atlas continent's landmass, was flooded with destructive and raging energy. The radiation within would melt the body of anyone beneath the Divine Ascension realm. The Stars of Doom burned their soul force and life force without restraint. Each passing second consumed a small percentage of it. In the half-minute they had been battling, they had already burned around 15%. Fortunately, their pseudo-immortal bodies allowed them to fight without weakness, but this would not last long. However, even with that sense of doom over their heads, the eyes of all those warriors burned with a majestic red light, the same one that courses through the eyes of the Scarlet King. They displayed a sense of unity that went beyond race, a sole purpose that flooded their souls. The collapsing Lightning Emperor, Zero Mint, and Anga underwent the most critical battle of their lives. Their eyes burned with a mix of determination and zeal. They were ready to lay down their lives to protect their homes, and their unwavering willpower was reflected in their fierce gazes. Meanwhile, the Depravitas were also enduring severe wounds from the relentless barrage of strikes from the sacred races. Most of them had yet to fully heal from their battle against the Red King, and every new wound forced them to consume their energy reserves. Usually, Lovecraft City would supply them with all the Depravita aura they needed to regenerate endlessly. However, the dimension was now using every ounce of energy to reinforce its walls, stopping the Sea of Fire from flooding inside and killing everything that was not part of Ether. The clash between the Stars of Doom and the Depravitas, and the clash of the warriors of the sacred races against the drones of the insect army, created a chaotic tableau. Blood and spells painted the air, forming a vivid and intense scene of mythical proportions. However, no matter how majestic and powerful it was, the mightiest of all, the true core of this final clash, was inside the tornado of red dark energy where the mightiest life forms of both sides clashed with maniacal killing intent.
ZNNNNN.
The sound of a sword severing spacetime echoed inside the dark red tornado as Horus slashed Cain's chest, leaving a deep and bloody wound in the young man's body. Cain clenched his teeth as he used his energy to regenerate his flesh and armor before slashing with his spear, cutting a piece of Horus' face. But just like him, the Depravita healed the next second using his energy. Cain's laws and the flow enhanced every move he made, countering the abilities of the concept of rage from the Depravita. The clash seemed like a simple martial contest, when in reality supernatural powers of the highest caliber were displayed every second. The Depravita of Rage and the Scarlet King abandoned all pretense of defense, launching relentless attacks with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Their energy and regeneration abilities were being pushed to the limit. The clash was a display of raw power and determination, each blow resonating with the desire to kill in their hearts. However, even as they were butchering each other, away from the rest of the battlefield by the vacuum generated by their formidable power, the Scarlet King and Horus still kept a small part of their consciousness on the state of the dimensional barrier. More and more cracks were forming around it, and it was only a matter of time before they shattered, marking the end of the Lovecraft City. Yet it was also only a matter of time before the Stars of Doomsday consumed their soul force, and the Depravitas killed the army of the sacred races that entered the dimension. Horus and the Scarlet King knew their victory's impact on the battlefield, essentially turning the table to their side's victory, which was why they were so eager to land the perfect blow. It seemed that the one who found it first was the Depravita of Rage. Horus managed to dodge the Spear of Doom, moving his body to the side at the perfect angle before setting his sword ablaze and waving it down with all his power.
Inferno of Wraths.
Cain's eyes widened, seemingly stunned by the attack and incapable of responding to it. He only managed to gather his fallen aura around his body in the last second, triggering his defensive ability.
Aegis of the Fallen.
The barrier of dark energy weakened the blow, but the sword still nearly bisected the Scarlet King's body, sending him flying away from the red dark tornado of energy. All the life forms on the battlefield couldn't help but glance at the tornado as they saw the figure of the Scarlet King being blasted away. A large cut emerging from his right elbow to his waist, shocking the warriors of the sacred races and making the Depravitas smile. Horus' smile was the widest as he felt the strength of that blow and knew that even if Cain could heal, his energy pool would be drained. However, just as he thought victory was on his side, his face froze as he realized the direction in which Cain had been thrown away.
You bastard.
The Depravita of Rage roared, his soul burning in hatred and wrath as he flashed off to Cain like a maniacal beast, confusing everybody. On the other hand, Cain only smiled, his face pale due to the injury, but it was inconsequential as the attack had sent him to the dark temple in the center of the dimension. Immediately, he gathered the little amount of energy he had left before aiming at the weapon at the weakest point of the temple, its peak.
Wrath of the Nine Hells.
The Scarlet King roared as he dived down with the spear, shattering the ceiling and reaching the main hall before Horus could reach him. His eyes immediately went to the ancient key. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 950, The Final Battle/Broodmother.
Don't do it.
Horus shouted in rage and hatred as he flashed toward the Dark Temple, terror emerging in his heart as he contemplated Cain's next move. The Scarlet King only smiled as he glanced at the mutated body of the Void King, now an artifact of the Depravita race. He couldn't care less about the suffering of the Dark King, and his eyes glowed with desire and killing intent as he flashed forward and stretched his hand toward the ancient key. As soon as Cain got near the ancient key, it emanated a monstrous psychic force and energy barrier, but he burned what little was left of his life force and pierced all of them, finally placing his hand over the mutated body. No dimensional storage in ether could hold an ancient key for more than a few seconds, but Cain had one in his soul that had already proved worthy of the challenge. The next second, the Void King vanished, appearing inside the grand demonic devourer dimension, next to the blood god. Cain's eyes widened the next second as the amount of corrupted energy emanating from the Void King was gargantuan, so powerful that it made the grand demonic devourer dimension tremble, shaking his mind and soul despite the enhancements these two had obtained over the last year. Luckily, the empty 7 deadly flames immediately began to consume the dark radiation, flooding every corner of Cain's body, energy pool, and soul with dark mist force, making his strength and life force explode with power. It was only a matter of seconds before the empty 7 deadly flames took care of the initial outburst of corrupting energy from the Void King, allowing the grand demonic devourer dimension to stabilize. In the meantime, Cain couldn't help but smile as every wound on his body faded, and his life force was restored. Horus' entire body froze, his heart trembling with terror as he saw how Cain had taken the ancient key. The next second, his body and life force burst with power as if all the damage he had taken during their fight was insignificant. The despair rising in Horus's soul only heightened his rage, and he focused on the base of the Dark Temple before shouting like a madman.
Broodmother, devour him.
Cain's soul and mind were still trembling from the rumbling of his grand demonic devourer dimension when he heard Horus' enraged shout, only to feel how the entire Dark Temple began to tremble.
BOOMMMMs.
Shock appeared in Cain's eyes as he saw a massive demonic maw shattering the ground beneath his feet. His mind and soul were still trembling, so he could not dodge it, and the only thing his limited focus could do was channel his fallen aura.
Aegis of the Fallen.
Cain shouted as he used all the energy he could muster to trigger the ability, generating a dark energy barrier around his body just as the maw closed on him. The warriors of the sacred races had been ecstatic just a second ago when they saw how Horus frantically chased after the Scarlet King, only for this one to take the energy core of Lovecraft City. However, their faces froze the next second as they saw that gargantuan beast break through the Dark Temple and devour Cain. The Broodmother was massive and grotesque. Its dark, segmented body was covered in chitinous armor plates, and multiple clawed legs emerged from its abdomen. The creature had leathery wings and dragon-like horns on its head, making it a draconic insect hybrid. It was more than 10,000 meters long, its body lined with rows of pulsating egg sacs that gave the same aura as the drones from the insect army. Clearly, this gargantuan monster was the origin of the drones that had spread across Atlas for years as a never-ending wave. After devouring Cain, the Broodmother turned toward the warriors of the sacred races, its maw exuding a disgusting liquid as if it was ready for a feast. Yet before it could even take a step forward, terror appeared on its face. Horus's eyes glowed with a flash of hope for a second after seeing the Broodmother consume Cain. Nevertheless, as he saw the fear and terror emerging in the eyes of the insect-dragon hybrid, he knew something terrible would happen.
BOOMMMMs.
As if proving Horus's dread right, an explosion echoed from inside the Broodmother, causing the monster to puke a sea of green blood, and it was just the start.
BOOMMMMs. 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 BOOMMMMs.
Explosion after explosion echoed from inside the Broodmother's body. making the creature twist in pain, while maw and maw blood emerged from its maw.
Wrath of the Nine Hells.
Cain's voice emerged from inside the broodmother, only for the head of the insect monster to explode the next second as a flaming figure destroyed it from within. The Scarlet King stood in the sky of Lovecraft City with a smile on his face. His multicolored flames incinerated the blood and guts of the broodmother, and his aura and life force were as radiant as the sun, getting stronger by the second. While the leader of the sacred races stood there like a sun god, the broken body of the broodmother fell to the ground, the gargantuan 10,000 meters long beast dead. That death had a cataclysmic effect on the battlefield, since the next second the thousands of drones trembled, and any sense of rationality in their mind faded as they began to attack everything in their sight, including themselves. Horus glanced at the madness among the drones, the terror and panic in his eyes growing more and more powerful, only for this to reach its peak as he heard the sound of glass breaking.
Cracky.
Due to Lovecraft City losing its energy core, the ancient key, it could no longer enhance the dimension barrier, making the cracks in it grow so massive that waves of tribulation fire flooded through them, incinerating everything in their path. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.